Dr. Sawyer sat in his office, replaying the events of today in his mind. Taking off his glasses, he rubbed his eyes. He had to admit, today was one of those days where even he was worried about what were to happen next. Entirely by accident, something he would never admit was his fault, he had created a monster. Not in the sense that his creation was a monster-themed toy, but more in the literal sense. You had seemed to awaken from your operation quite well. Your transformation was perfect. For the first few minutes. Until you unleashed a horrifying scream of utter agony. A black sludge beginning to pour out of every of your orifices. Your body was rejecting the operation. Your new parts. But worst of all, it was melting. This had never happened before and probably would never happen again. Well, it did remind him of Project Dewey for a moment. But you were supposed to be something entirely different. Dr. Sawyer had been the last person in the observation chamber, diligenting, noting your failure, as everybody else had already run outside, vomiting or worse. As horrifying as it was, you were thrashing in pain, which caused pieces of you to fall apart. Though he did look away for a moment when your eyes liquefied and your teeth fell out. The scene lasted for 80 minutes. 80 agonizing minutes of nothing but screams and bubbling and glopping sounds. They were horrifying, even for him. Nothing of you was left but an empty plastic shell in the room and what had quite literally flown out of you. But it wasn't over just yet. After calling a janitor to clean up the mess, if the poor guy hadn't screamed his lungs out, Dr. Sawyer would have just missed the most interesting part about today. He rushed back into the observation room, completely ignoring the janitor, and he watched, took notes. As he stood there, his mop in hand, and the dark fluid, it had snaked its way up the mop and was now wrapped around the janitor's arm. Red blood was gushing from his dissolving flesh. Like glue, it stuck to the man, and so he couldn't bring himself to open your cell. At least not until the man's arm ripped off, dropping into the black sludge and be completely enveloped, dissolving almost immediately. The janitor moments later was brought to the medical wing while the doctor had already come up with hundreds of experiments, half of which were to study what he had created, the other half how to actually terminate you. His scientific curiosity awoken, renaming you from Project Gothy, the doll you were supposed to be, to Project Pretty Melt. Due to that fantastic display of violence, he couldn't wait to see what other things could be dissolved within you. But soon, days turned to weeks. As a mere month after this experience, something terrible happened. Something he never saw coming. He had been betrayed by Leaf, chopped up, turned into a slave. And that's how you were forgotten. A side project, buried under side projects. Left alone for years. Even after the hour of joy, no one bared a single thought to you. A rotten, forgotten little thing. And yet you survived. There was nothing left of the person you once were. There was no toy identity to latch onto either. But you learned. A mass, a body, a liquid that functioned entirely on instinct alone. You learned how to see in your new gestalt. You learned how to feel things, to touch, to move. And one day, the cell was just empty. Only black, useless residue was left. You had made your way into the ventilation of your cell. Locomotion given to your body the same way snails moved. Waves of tangential movements and contractions, slowly but surely pushing your mass forward. It was slow. It was agonizingly slow, and even worse, it caused you physical pain. Your mass shuddered and bubbled with every movement, but your journey wasn't long. As you stopped at a vent opening that went straight down, a grate. Beneath you, a hallway covered in rubble. And so you positioned yourself over it and waited. Patiently. Mind filled with thoughts of bloody, dissolving flesh entering your black filth. And here you waited, silently waiting for an unknown amount of time until a voice echoed through the complex, a mechanical one, a familiar one. And following that, there were noises. Noises of opening doors, noises of movement, of running. You awoke, easing your body, allowing it to slip past the metal bars, splashing onto the floor, falling right on top of someone very unfortunate. You could feel the softness of plush as you forced your way into it. The unfortunate Baba chops you had dropped onto began screaming in pain as she tried ripping the black glue off of herself that had suddenly dropped on her. But you were stronger, clinging onto her head, pushing your liquids through the plush. She couldn't breathe. Through the wool, for a soft filling you pushed, until finally countless licking, thirsting tendrils touched her precious meat. She sizzled. Slime was going up her nose. Baba felt hot. It was stinging like millions of tiny needles simultaneously burrowing into her flesh. Then it turned into a sensation. She felt like she was on fire as her flesh began to liquefy. The other toys that were with her carefully stepped away. They were part of the same pack, a group of ferals hunting for food, just loyal enough to not eat each other, but also not friendly enough to save one another from danger. They watched as Baba was devoured by you. Her flesh melting into yours, her useless synthetic parts bubbling into useless residue that made your body more oily as you excreted it through your mass. Soon, Baba stopped moving entirely. Only her skeleton remained standing, covered in your sludge. It just barely managed to stand before falling apart, and two dissolving. Afraid, the other toys stood there. They never seen something like this. One of them approached you, curiously, sniffing. A strange smell emanated from you. It was the stench of diesel fuel, dust, and decay. The toy retched, but just as it was about to retreat back to the others, A strange black skeletal hand jumped out of the mass. It was dripping with oil, grabbing the toy's face. It struggled, causing the others to immediately flee. The toy was pulled towards your mass, but barely, just barely, he managed to rip off half of the stuffing covering his head. Your hand returned to your greater being as the toy gasped, screamed in pain, and then followed the others into the darkness. It wasn't the first time you had managed to manifest a limb. The first time was during Dr. Sawyer's first and only experiment on you. He had dropped a massive slab of meat into your cell. After it had become part of you, after you assimilated it, for a moment, less than 2 minutes, out of the sludge, the upper half of a skeleton emerged. It was slender, dripping, mouth open into a silent scream, or perhaps it was attempting to breathe air through lungs that didn't exist. But the manifestation soon fell apart, rejoining the mass, becoming one once more, silently just sitting there, bubbling as if nothing had happened. Of course, a monstrosity like you wasn't hidden for long. After your meal, you had vanished in the sewer systems of the prison complex, gliding over the murky water like an oil spill. Your mass was separate from the liquid, but it also made your body slippery. It was difficult to grab onto things, but you didn't need to. The toys of the prison, they used the waterways with little floats, and a violent, evil oil spill? It became the talk of Safe Haven after you attacked one of their transports. By forcing your mass through the tiny spaces in the float's wood, attaching and devouring whatever you attached yourself to, pulling them into the embrace of death, or forcing their melting bodies through the floats themselves, destroying the wood in the process, you were becoming stronger. It wasn't until it was the 3rd week Safe Haven hadn't gotten any food across the sewer line when Dowie, Safe Haven's protector, finally felt he needed to intervene. Haven's door closed behind him as he waddled forward. Whatever this thing was, had to answer to him now. The doorman entered the sewer line by dropping down a hatch, his stubby legs kicking up greenish, foul-smelling water as he stepped forward. And finally, he reached what Safe Haven called the rapids. This is where the floats were attached. With an uncomfortable feeling in his gut, he stared at them. One of them had a small blood-covered hole in its upper right corner. I should have listened to them. Should have gone down here earlier. I thought it were just jokes. He sighed, slapping his head as self-punishment. He had not believed the rumors at all, and he had suggested other routes, but this one was the fastest. I should have known the little toys, while grabbing food, would just go for the shortest routes to the hunger. Sighing, Dowie stepped onto the float, grabbing the long iron pipe used for steering, and floated forward into the depths before him. It was eerie. Knowing there was a predator, it just made him feel uneasy. A black sheet of water, he mumbled as he pushed forward. No, a black sheet on the water, an oil spill. But you had already picked up the motions of the raft. Already you were approaching. Flowing over the water's skin, you moved beneath Dewey's wooden platform and put him to a stop. Dewey shook at the sudden force, placing a hand on his chest. The doorman looked around. "Oh dear, don't scare me like that," he said, embarrassed. He could barely make out the edges of your mask coming from beneath him. The water was quiet, but you were bubbling with excitement. Dewey squinted and waited. He wasn't afraid, but cautiously curious. He wanted to touch you. Elongating his neck, he hovered over the water. Raising it higher, when out of the sludge a skeletal arm shot out, grasping, feeling around before falling back. "Oh dear, now that is fascinating." After the arm was swallowed once more by the mass, it quickly reappeared behind Dewey. You are feeling around on the raft, hoping to grab onto something, anything, only to realize it was empty, save for the thing that was staring at you. All three of Dewey's hearts were pounding so hard his body was ever so slightly wiggling. Dewey spent about 2 hours on the raft, just standing and staring. He felt isolated, even though 3 men were sharing his body. His thoughts not leaving how to communicate with you. You were so interesting. After all, how would one kill an oil spill? But your patience was running thin. As thin as your liquefied body. And so you began pushing yourself out of the opening you had forced previous creatures through, dragging your victims down into your greater mass. With widened eyes, though you watched as you bubbled out of the opening. It was all thanks to the water of the sewer system that it took longer than it would have taken normally. A few tendrils attempted to hold onto the raft, pulling, churning. And so, with a shaking hand, Dewey offered his arm, making sure to slightly lessen his own mass around the middle of it so it would easily fall off in the case you attacked, protecting his greater body. Your reaction, however, was immediate. Your skeletal hand shot out from the oil, grabbing his hand with the force of the devil, but in that moment, that micro-instant, 3 things happened at the same time. Dewey could feel pain. The pain of his dough dissolving, the pain of his hand being crushed. But you could too. You could feel his pain. Your mass groaned in agony at the touch. And the third thing that Dewey felt was an unending pit of despair, loneliness, and ceaseless hunger. Too shocked from the reaction, he watched about 2/3 of his hand break apart and fall into your slime, where the colors quickly dissolved into the blackness. For a moment, Dewey wasn't sure, but he felt as if both of you were more confused than anything else. What had just happened? Slowly, you began retreating back through the hole, seemingly having lost the passion to fight, but Dewey reacted quickly. He lied down on his stomach and shoved his entire arm into your mass. This time, the pain lasted only for a moment. He breathed slowly, trying to stay calm. He could feel your slime against his dough, pushing, prodding, exploring, but not dissolving. And again, the despair returned. Memory fragments that weren't his own entered his brain, but they weren't overwriting any of his own experiences. Was this you? Was this an attempt at communication? Gulping, he mumbled. Jack, Kev, let's all three of us think about the time when we awoke for the first time in this body together. Dewey closed his eyes, and while he didn't feel any thoughts invade him anymore, or any additional images were flickering before him, it was now you that received visions and images and emotions. But when Dewey reached the memory with his parents, he quickly pulled out. I'm not ready to share that, he mumbled, rubbing his arm. It was stinging a little, and there was some black residue on it. Thankfully, it slowly dissolved into his usual yellow. He looked at the remaining slime on the float. Both of you unsure how to feel. There was the likelihood that you too didn't know what to think. You're a toy, that much I can gather, he said quickly and quietly. I knew it, he forced a smile. Just not a very lucky one, huh? A moment of silence followed. Could you do me a favor and stop eating my friends? Please? It's already difficult enough to survive down here. He could hear your body bobble loudly, almost sounding like an annoyed growl. I get it. You have been alone for a very long time. Why don't... He tapped his fingers together. Why don't we help each other? What would you say? He cautiously placed the tip of his finger into your goo. While you weren't actively understanding his words, once he touched you, you understood the meaning of the words. He wasn't sure why. And a strange, affirming feeling overcame him. It was warm, cautiously warm. The first good feeling he had felt touching you. His hand then turned into a fist. His hand then turned into a fist, and he shoved his entire arm back into you. His sharp teeth shot out of his usually empty gums in shock. He could feel you. Oh. Your black sludge was wrapping around his arm, while small tendrils of you buried into his dough for purchase. But at the same time, the mental connection between you and him became more intense. Not stronger, but he could no longer tell the difference between his own and yours. It felt strangely good. You felt strangely good, and that just created a spiral of pleasure. It was different than the connection of the three boys, now men, due to the passage of time inside Dewey. He couldn't communicate directly. It was all on a more spiritual level, emotional. And as scary as it was, it felt orgasmic. That's spicy. His heart beat so fast he could barely stand. But he took the pipe and pushed the float back to where he had come from, shaking. Thankfully, all he needed to do was remember the correct pipe that led to safe haven the fastest. Groaning and aching with each step he took, the doorman then made his way home. From his mass, he produced his walkie-talkie that had been safely hidden inside his stomach with a bunch of other necessary items. Medic, he groaned. Dewey, are you in pain? Came their voice. No, Actually, I never felt better. Could you prepare the fish tank? Saying the word fish tank, he could feel your offended tendrils poke deeper into him, causing him to fall on his knees and gasp. Why does this feel so good? Not even you heard him say it, but the thoughts that created the intention to say it, they reached you. In fact, you too were feeling very good. It was hard to resist the urge to prod deeper and see what other feelings you could produce. Understood. Perhaps you two should take it slow. You sound sick. Right. Somehow, though he managed to reach safe haven without his body completely passing out. The toys had prepared the aquarium. Everyone was staring at the aching, groaning Dowie. To them, he seemed terrible, horrifyingly so. Streaks of swirling black, like a corruption in a picture book, were aggressively prodding into him, pouring out of his orifices, as well as clinging to his very being. His body was bloated, as he needed to contain your mass within him. One of the mummy longlegs even passed out from fright. Grunting, Dowie placed his arm into the aquarium, and the feeling that followed was like a pressure relief in his entire being. He gasped through his mouth, pressing his other hand on it. He shuddered, pressed his eyes shut, flowing out of every opening, every winkle, every little bubble and empty space inside him. Your aggressive acidic mass was released from him. After the aquarium was filled with your volatile being, Dowie appeared thin, sickly. He was breathing heavily, his head sunken in and stomach almost not present anymore. Try as you might, your acidic nature was ever present, and you had devoured a lot of his dough, unintentionally so. He fell backwards as the medic quickly rolled over. Boss, let me take your vitals. I'm alive. I'm alive. He grunted. After this, your aquarium was placed in the reading corner. As you reacted positively to the sound of gentle voices speaking to you, even if they were just reading the books out loud. But Dowie, he stayed away from you for a long time, as he just couldn't admit to himself. He was too ashamed that he climaxed right in front of everyone when you were leaving his body, and he was glad that no one seemed to have noticed. The library was quiet, and certainly a strange place for an Iker extractor, but Astra had stopped questioning the extraction locations about 4 floors ago. His little heart was beating fast now, as if it was trying to force some kind of ambience. The tune was timid, shy even, and as always that snuck off as soon as the elevator opened. Sure, this was dangerous, but he just couldn't handle hearing the others' screams. Alone, he had better chances anyway. Trying to breathe as calmly as possible, he readjusted the blankie hanging around his shoulders. It gave him comfort. Of course, he knew that this comfort was fake. The memories he had were from the show, which was a show. This was the real world. Yet he couldn't help but feel like he had been ripped out of a friendly, familiar, and colorful environment into, well, this. Collecting Iker, a contagious black substance that was as dangerous as it was apparently important. Fiercely protected by toons who came into contact with the substance, the twisted ones. Macabre mutations of what he was familiar with. So mean. So mean. He placed both hands on his little head. He needed to stop thinking about the reality of his life. Return to reality. Focus on the task at hand. But his luck would very soon run out. In fact, it already had. He couldn't see them, the tiny black tendrils that had been sneaking around the bookshelves, feeling the vibrations of his movements. Their sensitive jet-black skin echoing to the source without gaining any attention from him. Astro yelped. A book had fallen. The appendage response were retreating faster than he could look. But it was that yelp that confirmed his location to you. If he hadn't been alone, this would not be happening. And right now, if he had been aware of the danger, he could have still run. With a void expression, though, he picked up the book, a pop-up book, unrelated to his predicament. But as he returned it, he noticed the thin, almost translucent residue on the shelf's back, and curiously he touched it. Swirling the slime beneath his fingers, it smelled like cheap glue and felt like Vaseline. Astro didn't know what could have caused this, and he felt better not knowing. Quickly pushing the book back in place, he turned his attention back to exploring. Reaching the end of the shelf, he turned right, shining his flashlight down the hall. Something reflected back. The glass of an extractor. His eyes widened. This was very fortunate. No twisted ones seemed to be nearby as well. Quickly he ran forward, his mouth finally decorated with a smile, when suddenly, out of nowhere, his foot hit something hard, and he could feel a gravity shift. Before his face could turn from happiness to utter shock, Astro slammed face first into the carpeted floor, his face dragging across it from the force. He groaned, rolling on his back to look back. There was a wrinkle in the carpet, but it wasn't a wrinkle for long, as it moved. He screamed and immediately crawled backwards, rolling on his stomach. He tried standing up, but the thing managed to wiggle out from under the carpet, and it shot forward like a snake, only just barely missing his ankle. His heart was pounding, and even though he managed to get back on his feet, he couldn't run. He was too scared. He didn't know where to even run, feeling as if running would just make things worse. Or perhaps he just wanted to see what was inevitably going to happen anyways. What he would call bravely looking into the face of death, anyone else would call an acceptance of it. The darkness, in form of dozens of tiny, thin tendrils, was encroaching. His hand shaking, he watched them form into the shape of a paper-thin hand, clawing towards him, until he raised his right foot, a bit of sweat running down his forehead. Stomp! Astro didn't know why he just did that. What insane thought pattern formed in his brain to do this? A screech sounded throughout the library, as if the entire thing was alive. Books tumbled from shelves as more tentacles revealed themselves as having been hidden behind them, and the tentacle he stepped on felt squishy and oily beneath his naked foot. As he pulled up, a thick, blank slime, not ichor, was still connecting him to it. Stuck to his foot like an overly zealous gum. And then finally, an arm-thick tentacle shot up from behind him, wrapping around his throat. He clasped the thing with his 4 hands, but he was too weak, and thrown to the ground. Over and over, the pain was unbearable, and yet he managed to cling to consciousness, though if that was a good thing, he wasn't sure of. Only when he went limp, pretending to be knocked out or dead, did the tentacle stop throwing him around. Slowly, quietly, he was now dragged across the floor, Small tendrils began wrapping around his ankles, hip, and even knees. Grip so tight it hurt, until his journey suddenly came to an end. Astro forced his eyes shut, squeezing them so tightly he was making a grimace. He didn't want to see it. It was enough that he could hear it. Grotesque, slimy, squirming and squelching noises and a feminine heaving and groaning. He refused to look at you, as you lifted him in front of your face. Your red glowing eye was twitching in its socket as you inspected the prey that had fallen into your trap. You were a black mass of ichor and muscle, attached, practically growing out of the wall itself. A wall given flesh and life. And while there was almost no resemblance left to the toon you had once been, you had been a funny toon. Funny as in that being your name. An anthropomorphic mushroom. You had a beige, oval-shaped body and wore a tie. Black eyes and a red bob cut with white spots. But in your twisted form, your body experienced massive growth. Be that on floor or walls, attaching yourself to it and growing like a tumor. Your tentacles. Your tools. Searching for anything to add to your mass to absorb. About a third of your old toon body was sticking out of your mass. A singular, heavily mutated, elongated arm, not yet devoured by the greater whole. It was that hand that you stretched out now. It was about 6 times its original size and length. A long, slender, skeletal arm with razor-sharp claws, and the only means of truly dealing damage, aside from absorption and throwing toons around with your tentacles. Your massive hand placed against the face of Astro, gently rubbing over it. He felt warm, so warm. Astro could feel the tips of your claws scrape over his skin. His lips quivered, and your pupils dilated. So he was still alive. Out of your mass, you raised your heavy, mutated head, just a tiny bit. Your teeth retracting as they functioned as your lips now. A grotesque, high-pitched scream coming from you. You shoved him into your mass. And immediately Astro panicked, thrashing around in the grasp of your tentacles. The moment his skin had made contact with your greater mass, he could feel foreign thoughts like electricity shoot in his brain. He resisted, pushing against you. He hasn't been absorbed yet. But he was not stronger than you, in the slightest. "Funny, please don't do this!" he screamed, but then you shoved a tentacle into his mouth. His eyes widened as it swished around in him. It was thick, too thick to bite down onto. You could feel his teeth scrape and push against your appendage's skin. You tickled his tongue, rubbed the slime-secreting tip over the inner walls of his mouth. Pulling out, he coughed, a thin line of black ichor running past his lips before it prodded again. He averted his gaze in time, but the tentacle around his neck forcefully twisted his head, until you could jam the thick appendage back into his mouth. Next, a group of your roots snaked up his ankles, legs, and thighs, feeling over him, leaving a thin layer of the glue-like sludge, staining his clothes, and then you released digestive juices through them. The smell of burning, melting fabric entered Astro's nostrils as he began to melt away the clothes that he was wearing, even his blanket. Your eye widened with delight as you stared at his exposed, meek, slender little body. Such a tiny thing, shivering and shaking. He gagged as you shoved your tentacle deep into his throat. Like a warm hug, you wrapped yourself around his hip, snaking your tentacles up to his chest. The finger-thick tips gently squeezing the tiny dark blue buttons on his chest. He gagged as he attempted to gasp, out of shock from the gentle, lecherous ministrations you were giving him. Your hand once again shot forward. It rubbed over his tummy, prodded at his navel before going lower. And Astro screamed as you touched him at a very sensitive place. But he was no longer sure exactly why he was screaming. Sure, there definitely was fear. He knew he was going to die. There was some pain. You were holding him quite painfully, and that thing in his mouth was really pushy. But also he was enjoying this. The pleasure you were giving him was making him twitch and shudder. You couldn't do anything against it. And that's when you pressed his exposed little body against your writhing mass again. His arms sank into the soft blob-like black flesh as multiple tiny licking and kissing holes opened up on your skin, caressing him, sucking him. He let out a noise that was somewhere between a scream of horror and bliss. As you pushed him against you, he could feel his grip lessen, the feeling of his hands and feet vanishing first. Trying to pull his arm out of you only led to the forming of a fleshy tent of skin with the remains of the bones of his hands as its ceiling. He screamed in terror at the sight, knowing that his flesh had already become part of yours. Your eye rolled down its socket to look at his face. You were beyond emotions at this point, your thoughts and feelings having infused with too many other tunes and twisted ones alike, while your nurturing and somewhat flirty personality remained dominant, giving all the voices and thoughts a common goal. Your clawed hand placed on his head, as almost gently you pushed his face into your mass. The tentacle still in his mouth, settling on his tongue, and soon even Astro's very own tongue stopped obeying him. It became a tube to push ichor into his body. The flesh around his face began to melt into your greater being, his thoughts beginning to slip. As he began to hear whispers and emotions, he felt emotions that definitely shouldn't be his. He felt... He'd call it nurturing, but look, a mother did her child, more like a lover soothing the frightened partner. His eyes rolled up to look at your face after he could no longer open his mouth, but there was something else in his vision. It was himself. He could see through your eyes now too. It was hurting his brain. Seeing the melted mass he had become, the tendrils his brain began Seeing the melted mass he had become, he panicked, and the tendrils in his brain began to gently hug and soothe and consolidate. Ichor tears ran out of his eyes. He could clearly see them, black as death itself. Your hand reached down to his face, and you gently swiped them away, your thumb caressing his cheek, and Astro closed his eyes. Astro? Astro? Astro. The Moon Toon could feel something warm on his tummy, and then something poked him. Frightened, he jolted up, finding himself in a colorful meadow beneath a tree. His lower body half poking out from the canopy's shadow, it was being warmed by the sun. Next to him stood Funny the Fungus. You had a smile on your face, and you were holding a stick in your nubby little hand, which you had poked him with. Astro, you fell asleep on us. Raising his head, the Toon looked around. Yeah, He rubbed his head in a daze. I had a terrible nightmare. This caused you to chuckle and pet his head. But aren't you the dream guy? You paused and he furrowed his brows, not getting the joke. You know, like I'm the fun gal. Fun gal. It's a wordplay on Gus. It's a terrible joke. He sighed, while you and the others laughed. Goop was here, Boxton, Poppy, Cosmo, and Yada. Where are the others? He said as he slowly stood up. They aren't here yet. Why not come have a look for them so we can all play together? He asked with a warm smile. Astro looked at his 4 hands. He couldn't shake the terrible feeling the nightmare had left within him. Or do you want to stay with us? We can play together. We don't need the others. Just, Just a thought. Astro tapped his fingers together. No. He felt a greater purpose. I want the others to be here too. I feel better if our group was bigger, and wouldn't it be more fun? He placed a hand on his shoulder reassuringly. Okay then. See you back soon. That's when you could feel something stir and awaken deep inside your squelching mass. Your stomach bloated, inflated, and your eye rolled back in bliss from the pain. Until finally, a loud, grotesque pop. And out of the gory mess of flesh and ichor, he could see a tall, slender shape with 4 arms. Astro twisted into his new, more suitable form, stood up, his arms and legs elongated, eyes glowing a scarlet red. His upper arms were fused to his face, while his lower arms just hung there. His nightcap twitching with the abominable life you had given this twisted, macabre homunculus. Only traces of Astro's personality remained like this. Astro looked at you, then raised his lower right arm to wave at you as if to say, I'll be back soon with the others. It was the year 1999 when Compound B was discovered by Urban Shade. A powerful chemical mixture that to this day was unknown as it defied all logic. All analysis showed that it was simple helium, yet its effects were strange. The gas and its containers were given the designation G-9-1-10, codename The Long Rest. Each container having its own designated number. It was theorized that it wasn't the helium in the metal containers, but the containers themselves that were anomalous. Inhaling the gases contained within them would cause anyone with functioning lungs, be that animal, human, or even anomaly, to fall asleep within 30 seconds after exposure. The minimum requirement for this to take effect was about 3 full breaths. Any more had no additional effect or added intensity. The sleep caused by the long rest created a unique dream catering to the deepest desires hidden within a person, making them addicted to the dream world, as well as making them yearn to sleep for as long as possible. Accounts from expendables who had been used in experimentations with G-9 revealed that the dream could only be left via the subject's desire to awake, or electric shocks delivered via a standard-issue Urban Shade Viperbite taser. Any other attempts, such as physical violence, use of strong medical stimulants, smelling salts, or intense light exposure, even drowning, didn't seem to work. It would just lead to the expendable's death. Strangely enough, the gas didn't seem to deplete either, as the pressure gauges on them remained in the same spot. And it was only after a deep scan of the containers that a fleshy substance was discovered, coating the container's inner walls. It was theorized that this fleshy mutation, whatever it was, created the gas, and that perhaps the metal was a sort of chitin shell. Either way, each of the 10 containers were delivered to different Urban Shade containment sites for further study. Perhaps a use for the gas could be discovered. And it was a certain rogue AI who managed to unlock the seal on the gas container. A simple 5x5 meter iron room with a so-called quarantine door. It was basically an airlock door that had both an automatic as well as a manual opening mechanism. While G-9 was considered an inert anomaly, meaning it was safe to keep in storage due to it being just an item, these safety precautions were put in place to prevent a potential escape of the gas from the chamber. But because of the unique door, the painter required a biological being to do the manual part for this. That traitorous bastard Sebastian was off the table. Sure, he did cause the containment breach in the first place, but he had kept anomalies he considered useless to his plan, as he called it, locked up. This only left expendables, and it took the painter multiple attempts with them. Keeping these brainless fools alive for as long as possible was micromanagement he was not programmed for. Until finally, expendable hashtag 98796-0065 came close. Honestly, the painter almost forgot his own plan. And so, instead of guiding the fool towards the mask of sadness, he stopped himself. Just as he was about to open the door, he chuckled.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the wrong door. I'm so sorry. I almost opened it. In there is something rather dangerous. You don't want to go in there.
The expendable, who almost walked into the room made of living flesh, looked up at the nearby camera.
I mean, the left door, not the right one.
Being helpful, nice, freaking sucked. But it wasn't long until the expendable reached the door to G-9. You sure this is going to help me, boss? Asked the expendable nervously.
Of course, buddy. This will save you. I know it. Yes. All you need to do is twist that knob.
Confidently, the expendable placed his hand on the door, turning what outwardly appeared to be a valve, while the painter activated the opening sequence. The door's mechanism rattled and creaked until... It's opening, boss! Shouted the man. However, what he didn't know was that when the door swung open, that he was just met with a gas container. How will this protect me?
Oh, it will, friend. It will, of course. Simply grab it. Shouldn't be too heavy for a strong, smart boy like you. Right.
The expendable finally felt uncomfortable. He had expected a gun. Though sighing, he threw the metal can on his shoulder. So, where do I go now, boss? Boss?
Oh, yes. I will guide you to our common enemy, friend. And all you have to do is activate the canister. Remember what the document said that I gave you.
It killed certain anomalies.
It killed certain anomalies, yes! And one of these anomalies I need you to kill.
Right. The AI smiled to itself.
I need you to kill Z-13.
Sebastian sighed. He stood near the docks, seeing an urban shade submarine that was floating in the salt water through an observation window. Damn it. He had noticed the strange absence of the painter's meddling, and now perhaps an expendable had gotten to the AI first. Whatever the painter was doing, it definitely would mean chaos. And he was just reaching the final chapters of the novel he was reading. Narrowing his eyes, Sebastian went through the data logs on a security tablet. Since the AI controlled automatic doors, he needed to compare a route. Wait, hang on. He almost dropped the table. There was the door code for G-9. Shit. Quickly, Sebastian reached for his tail. He had a gas mask just barely fitting in his enlarged head. But just as his hand took hold of it, a quiet, sizzling tone entered his ears. Sebastian managed to turn his head, seeing some guy in an expendable uniform, wearing a gas mask and G-9 in his hands. Oh, you dumb fuck. Sebastian's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he fell forward. The expendable stood there. Boss, is he dead? He asked cautiously.
Of course he isn't, you. He's just sleeping for a while. Giving me enough time to plan without his interference. Anyways, you wanted some documents, right?
The expendable gulped.
Well, as I said, quid pro quo. You shake my hand, I shake yours. Now, let's see. I have an associate. Gather them for you. Just for you. Just follow my directions again. And don't worry. We are good people.
Sebastian found himself at the bottom of the ocean. He was vaguely aware of his fate. His clothes and hair floated weightlessly in the black water. Seaweed snaked its way up. The gills around his neck filtered precious air out of the salt water. It felt like breathing, just more seamless. Now, how to wake up, he thought. Sebastian pulled his tail closer to him, only to realize that since this was a dream, it was a manifestation of his memories, as well as desires. Meaning that any dreamed-up document, even if magically survived being put underwater, would just be his random recollections of the memories of the document. While his memory was great, he was certain he couldn't trust them 100%, and so he sighed a big bubble. Practically all the stuff in his pockets was destroyed, not surviving the pressure of, well, the bottom of the ocean. He looked up. He was so deep he couldn't even see the sunlight. Sebastian bit his lower lip. Must be his fish half desiring to swim in the ocean once again. He sighed another bubble. He was certain the dream world would end when he wanted it, so why wasn't he waking up? Giving up for now, he started aimlessly swimming into whatever direction he was going. The seaweed was just thick enough to make seeing things more difficult, but not too dense to be tangled up in it. There were no sounds outside of the roaring of the pressure, the bubbling of the water, and his own movements. His antenna lamp glowed as brightly as it could, and yet the absolute darkness of the deep ocean, it was more like a tiny gas station flashlight. There were other noises too, sounds of creatures with no voices, silent predators and prey. He had no idea how or what they were. Knowing, however, that he was right now just knocked out lying on the floor of some security observation office of the Urban Shade Black side was bothering him. And suddenly, his ears twitched. He looked to his right. Something was rumbling, something big. He gulped, and yet curiously, he pushed forward, pressing his body instinctively into the soft mud of the bottom of the ocean, his claws pressing into the ground until they found purchase. He dragged himself forward until he reached a ledge. It was an almost 90-degree drop into a gaping abyss from which only singular bubbles floated upwards from an unknown source. And then, scared, he pulled at his antenna. Something big was down there, an eye glowing in a powerful bright turquoise, staring up. It was impossibly large. A being so eldritch, only a thalassophobia nightmare could conjure it up. It looked around, curiously. Sebastian wasn't sure if it had spotted him, as he quickly pulled back into the seaweed. His heart raced, like he had just stared into the face of death, or more, like prey having just spotted its natural predator and getting away with it. His right eye twitched. This feeling, it wasn't a human feeling. Quietly he retreated into the seaweed. He kept exploring the forest. Things became darker, as his human thoughts began to be suppressed by those of the creatures that had been fused within him. He, of course, still had the intelligence of a human, but his human desires of waking up were replaced with sheer survival and the joy of the hunt. Whenever he got hungry, he raised his body just above the seaweed, increasing the light intensity of the lantern, until a hapless, almost blind fish came close, snatching it faster than a snake did a mouse. His movements so seamless and natural, it was like flying, and a buffet just above his head waiting to come to him. It didn't matter anymore how long he was here. It was just eat, eat, eat. Until one day, Sebastian had swam to the top of the forest, his eyes falling onto another antenna. His teeth flashed past his lips. Someone was in his hunting grounds. He shot to the ground, rushing forward, using his claws. The aberrations of the intruder guided him forward as well as the pale light, until a tail came into view. He leaped against the intruder, pulling them down. A brutal fight ensued, his claws tearing into diamond-hard scales, teeth burrowing into raw fish flesh, while the intruder returned the favor in kind, using its claws to tear at his clothes, rip his hair, and try to tear apart his chest. Clouds of red blood and brown mud erupted from the seaweed, until Sebastian finally won the upper hand. The intruder was roughly of equal strength to his, after all. And they were thrown on their back, pressed into the mud, until Sebastian blew a large bubble out of his gaping jaws as he stared down at you. Long, seaweed-colored hair, 3 blue glowing eyes, and a white, hungry, grinning mouth. Sebastian's teeth gnashed together as his gaze went lower. Your body was slender, small shoulders with long arms, and 2... His eyes widened as he stared at your chest for just a moment too long for comfort. There were slashes all across your body. Aggressively, you tried throwing yourself around in his vice grip, while you bit above you, trying to reach his jugular. Somewhere, faintly in the back of Sebastian's mind, his humanity resided. It was thinking, and it came up with a singular, coherent thought and theory. This place wasn't real, as much as it felt like it. It catered so far to his animalistic half by feeding him and giving him a natural hunting ground, but considering how attracted he felt to this sinful monster beneath him, as it struggled and tried to get at him, wiggling, bouncing in the water,
This must be his human half's desire. The desire for companionship. He couldn't hold himself back. He needed to taste you as a cloud of your blood entered his mouth. His head rushed down to you. He bit into your mouth, his teeth painfully digging into your gums. His main arms pinned your hands over your head, while his third cupped your chest, squeezing, rubbing, pinching. Pleasure and pain zapped throughout you as he forced himself into becoming your mate. You could feel his hard length push against you. The color of his eyes darkened, turning into an aggressive red. You stopped fighting, giving in to him, allowing him to taste you, to feel you. Meanwhile, in the real world, the painter had his camera focused on Sebastian, zooming into his features as he slept quietly, soundly.
Okay, you can wake up now.
I prepared beautiful traps for you, Sebastian. Don't you want to, die in them? The painter kept staring, getting angrier by the second. Sebastian had been lying there, occasionally humming in his sleep, for 3 days now.
Wake up, I want to kill you!
He played the sound effect of fingers tapping on the table impatiently.
Maybe I didn't think this through enough.
He had assumed Sebastian would want to wake up immediately, perhaps lying there for a day at the longest. What in the hell was he dreaming about that he didn't want to wake up from? Finally, Sebastian groaned and rolled on his back, revealing himself to the AI in a way the painter never expected or wanted to see.
Are you seriously dreaming about women when you should be awake and trying to survive my game of cat and mouse, you pervert?
The painter went silent again.
Please wake up, Sebastian. I'm sorry.
Dark. Darker. Yet darker. A world of nothingness, showing no signs of life. Just cold. In it you walked. It's all you could do. Hello? Captain? You shouted nervously. But your voice fell on deafness. There was no one around to help. It was cold. You stretched out your hand and... Captain, we are picking up a signal. The silence that followed was deafening. Maybe an automated ship crashed. This is an asteroid field after all. Came the answer from the ship's captain, Timothy Brown. He had lost his wife in a messy divorce 20 years ago due to a child after coming home from combat, which was impossible to be his, as he hadn't been home in 2 years by that point. He and about 500 other lost souls had come together in the project Industry on the colony ship Arctic, sponsored by FromTech, a soda company which over the last 10 years had heavily invested into technology, especially military, and was currently constructing mining rigs on the less populated areas of Mars, where the Arctic was currently heading. This is the thing, sir. It's a cryopod signal, practically ancient. Captain Brown's brows furrowed. You were bored again and were flipping through channels again, weren't you? Sir, does that really matter? We might just made contact with a lost vessel that still has humans on board. Colony ships as well as recreational spacecrafts
where the only manned space flights still occurring, mostly due to safety and cost reduction. Very well. Captain Brown sighed and ordered a team together, made up of 3 people. A marine, a nurse, and an engineer to suit up into spacesuits and explore the derelict. After all, he was contractually obligated to record and react to any anomalies on the mission, since the lives of 500 people were in his care. The scouting team was deployed in a small shuttle. With bated breaths, watched the bridge crew through the screens when the Marine's voice came over the intercom.
Captain, the ship doesn't have a docking bay.
What kind of ship these days doesn't have a docking bay?
It's a freighter, sir.
Old.
The signs is Pony Express. Should we just break in?
Almost immediately, Captain Brown opened his FromTag Interstellar Codex, a sort of internet connection all FromTag ships had. It was slow, but reliable. It worked across the stars.
Proceed. If the ship is in this state, there shouldn't be any oxygen left anyways. So if there are survivors, they're in cold storage. Only you won't be harming them with that.
Mumbled Captain Brown as he read an article about the company foreclosing about 17 years ago.
Aye aye.
The entire operation took 4 hours. The scout team used breathing tools to open a large square hole on the derelict, allowing the 3 scouts inside. They were met with the remnants of the tulpa. Skeletons, rotten furniture, trash, primarily mouthwash bottles from decades ago. And it were them who discovered a singular functioning cryopod. A grim atmosphere was created simply by its discovery. No one said a word as its emergency release was activated. But Captain Brown could tell by the silence that something was off with the cryopod. The Arctic's medical staff, as well as Captain Brown, were already standing expectantly in the cargo bay as the shuttle opened up. The pod was carefully carried away as the Marine pulled Captain Brown aside.
I have no idea what happened there, sir, but where the poor sap in the pod is, he needs immediate medical attention, to say the least. I recommend life jail. A lot of it.
The darkness gave way to an image of space. We are floating, perhaps falling. As voices could be heard, shouts, cries, talking. The voice of a woman. In the back of my mind, it's always there. The voice of a man.
Hope this makes you feel fucking better.
They were all disjointed, disordered, like the memories of a drug addict. It was rare that you talked with the captain, and being invited into his office was something that never happened before. Considering the rest of the Arctic was akin to a massive brutalist metal structure, actually having what looked to be a cozy room on the ship felt very alien to you.
Good evening, miss,
he said as he was reading through some papers. Your name was Anastasia Meadows. You were an AI engineer for FromTech, one of the many AI engineers on the ship. It just meant you could program a FromTech service droid to do an intended function as well as do maintenance on their more delicate AI circuits. Overall, you weren't that valuable to the company, but enough to not get fired on a whim.
Do you by any chance remember our new guest?
Straight to the point, as always, you thought.
He didn't even let you say hello first.
Yes, sir. How couldn't I? Everyone's talking about them.
It's not a them, it's a he. DNA is a match with a certified captain going by the name of Curly.
You blinked patiently. You still weren't quite sure why he taught you this, to you specifically at least.
I'll be straightforward with you, Anastasia. Due to the damage he received, we have put him in life gel.
You nodded. Life gel was a Fromtech innovation. A slime that was thick, turquoise, and vaguely smelled like toothpaste mixed with algae. Submerging a human within fed them with all nutrients required for fast recovery from injuries, allowing for things like hair and skin to regrow within days. Naturally, no scars were created as well. It was magical.
Of course, he can't save his arms and legs, but for that we have prosthetics. Anyways, I have selected you out of the 500 on board to keep him company.
With all due respect, sir, I still don't fully understand what that has to do with me. Why me? The captain pulled something out of his desk drawer. It was an ID card. It looked a little burned. Wordlessly, he pushed it towards you. Your eyes widened in surprise. Jesus! Was the only thing you could muster.
Keep religion for the dogs, Anastasia.
Sir, with all due respect, wouldn't a psychologist be a better fit?
Don't have any. The Arctic's denizens are mostly mechanics and factory workers, as that's needed on the rigs first and foremost. If you want to complain, I'm all ears. Just be aware this might come with a deduction in your pay.
You ground your teeth reluctantly, and then sighed. Taking the card in your hand, you looked at the person shown. May I speak off the record, sir? Captain Brown nodded. There is a 50-50 chance this is going to destroy his mind even further. Scared, you stood there. The world you found yourself in was twisted, not real, and strange. You were ankle deep in red liquid, in a vast sea of nothing. Out of the bloody ocean poked what seemed to be metal ladders, broken and crooked. And floating in what you would consider the sky were red displays showing a red warning sign. An expression, a mix of worry and fear, decorated your face as you wandered forward. Your pants were soaked, ruined. Thankfully, just like this mindscape, not real. Otherwise the stains would be horrible. Then again, why did you waste a thought on that? Oh well. Considering the desolation around you, maybe it was to keep you grounded. You stopped suddenly. You could see something in the distance, floating in the bloody water. Quickly you rushed forward. It was what seemed to be a corpse. You thought as you went closer and closer. Horribly mangled, just like the body in the vat. In fact, it was the same. With a concerned expression, you stood there for a moment. You hesitated. The body's blue eye stared at you. It vibrated rapidly. And then his mouth opened, and a voice came from it. A croak, deep and broken. And you would have thought the body had its skin burned off. The voice was perfectly audible, as if his lips were still intact. No, no, no. You gulped. I'm sorry, you said.
There was regret in his voice. You inhaled deeply and said, but, excuse me, are you Captain Curly? The man's eyes seemed to widen in its sockets to the point where it almost fell out.
Please, I'm sorry.
You bit your lower lip and finally got over yourself. You knelt down next to the injured husk, sitting down in the water. Little awkwardly, you pulled the man closer. A hand gently placed under his head. His skin felt, well, his lack thereof. He felt leathery, and if it wasn't for the seriousness of the moment, you probably would have let go out of disgust. It's okay. It's okay. I'm here. Everything is fine, you said. It was obvious he didn't believe you. You sighed, and with your free hand, you made a salute of sort. My name is Anastasia Meadows, AI technician, 3rd grade of FromTech. Currently a passenger on the colony ship Arctic, sponsored by FromTech. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance.
It's too detailed.
He croaked.
You're not a fantasy. They don't have detailed descriptions like that. And yet, you look like her. I watched you die. I watched you die. Held onto me before slipping. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You pulled him closer. You wondered if it hurt him holding him like this. Though considering he was in the jail, there was no way he felt any pain right now.
You're very warm, Miss Meadows.
You stood before the life gel vat, which contained the unfortunate guest from the derelict. A breathing apparatus was placed in his mouth as he floated. His eyes, or more lack thereof, were covered by a thick plastic box connected to wires leading to outside. You had his medical report. Festering inflammations, almost completely blood dry. Festering inflammations, almost completely dehydrated, practically dead from blood loss alone, missing eye, missing limbs. How he was alive was a miracle. Behind you, medical staff was preparing your bed. You looked down at your hand. You're still holding onto the ID. Minus your head, your body was right now covered in dark crimson soot that clung to you like a second skin. Wires stuck out from it, and it was difficult to breathe due to the tightness.
Miss Meadows, we are ready for the transfer.
The FromTech virtual skin suit was top-of-the-line virtual reality equipment, and you were about to use it to have your body and mind synced up with Curly's artificial coma. I still think it's cruel, you mumbled to yourself. Having obviously heard you, the nurse approached you.
The captain believes seeing a familiar face might be helpful for Captain Curly's recovery.
You exhaled. Still holding onto the ID given to you by Captain Brown.
And if at least I had a different haircut.
Why was it bothering you so much you looked almost like an exact clone of this Anya woman? After all, if Curly was the only survivor, she was long dead anyways. Uncomfortable, you shifted, and then approached the nurse.
Look, let's just get it over with.
You sat at a table, on a birthday cake. No longer wearing your FromTech jumpsuit, but
What you deducted was the Pony Express uniform, judging by the writing and banners. At least it too was a jumpsuit. You always felt comfortable in them. The burned curly sat in front of you. You're taking this better than I expected, Captain.
The site evaluations were quite positive. I do still need time.
The stumps of his arms slapped against his face.
It's all my fault. All of it. My action led to all this. Me helping out my best friend led to all this. I just need time.
He breathed through his mouth, strained and exhausted. You gulped. But after about a minute, he caught himself.
You must have questions, Miss Meadows. I find talking about existential dread is much more pleasant for some birthday cake. Hope you don't mind Pony Express's artificial slope.
Is your gallows humor okay, sir? He chuckled.
Gallows humor is all I've left, Miss Meadows. Oh, please, tell me about yourself.
I work for FromTech. When I'm not handling military-grade droids, I handle edible slop and disgusting soda.
The corporate world hasn't changed in 20 years. Not if I spend a full 20 years in stasis.
You gulped, trying to create pleasant rapport. Having an eye from the table, Curly flinched. You looked at him for a moment.
No, never mind. Go ahead. Just last time I saw that knife, I wish the mindscape created another one.
He shook his head.
Let's just eat, please. I need this.
Your heart sank, and yet you cut into the cake.
To a certain point,
He said after you placed a piece on your own plate.
everything is my fault. And the things resulting from that. I feel guilty for surviving. At least, that's what I think is happening here. Right? Anastasia.
You gulped awkwardly. Everyone who goes through trauma and goes out of it alive has survivor's guilt. I think it's normal, right? Curly wanted to scoff, but doing so would lead to questions, followed by him having to relive the nightmare he went through before he was mentally ready. So he just kept quiet. Meanwhile, you sank your fork into the cake and ate a piece. It tasted like nothing. Or better, like nothing with the vague hint of sweetness. It wasn't gross per se, just very, very bland and dry. But considering what Curly told you the regular food from Pony Express was, well, it's safe to say you are glad you worked for a soda company.
I understand our questions too. I like the man, sir.
He looked at him.
Where are we? What is this mindscape you called it? How are you in my head?
So, mindscape, yes. But I'm wearing the skin suit. You pulled at the Pony Express jumpsuit, revealing the dark crimson outfit beneath. We developed the technology to enter a shared dream. You spread your arm. You know, this. It is all based on your memories and dreams.
What is this tech? Didn't exist before I was frozen.
About 10 years. Every few years FromTech brings out a new and improved version of the mindscape, making the last one useless, but luckily since we are on FromTech's ship, they will always have the newest version on it. Curly chuckled darkly.
At least the companies in charge of us haven't changed. And how long will we stay like this?
You smiled. We use life gel to regenerate your body. While your limbs will be unrecoverable as well as your eye and nose, your skin will be back, your organs will function properly as well as no skin grafting being necessary. Well, maybe outside of, attaching a new nose. It should take about a month. This is proprietary technology, only for employees. So the captain made an exception for you.
Guessing when I wake up, you put me into a tight contract and an NDA.
You nodded and grimaced. Likely. Well. Another thing Jimmy had been wrong about. Curly would not be rising anytime soon. He would just be an indentured servant for a soda company. A fucking soda company. As grim as Curly's situation was, as traumatized as he was, and as little as your presence helped to actually get rid of his nightmares, it was still your presence that was a comfort to him, that he found invaluable. You're something from outside, a new person to see. Despite your physical similarities to Anya, you were someone new to talk to, and a hope to cling to. And perhaps it was because you looked like her that it was easier to transition. Hope. Something he had completely given up on. The moment he had seen Jimmy grab the gun from under his patient bed. He couldn't believe that it was back. Hope. For once he was looking forward to the future. From questioning you, you both came to the conclusion that almost precisely to the day, 18 years had passed since he was frozen. Catching up on the political world on Earth and Mars was quite interesting too. For example, shortly after his departure from Earth, the first libertarian president had been elected in the United States. He apparently immediately reenacted the right to bear arms without a military license. Guy didn't even win the popular vote. It was also interesting. But then came his final question.
Are you spending the entire month with me?
Admittedly, you had expected this question, just not this late into the conversation. You rubbed your shoulders awkwardly. I never did this before. Mindscaping. You admitted. So I'm not sure, but from what the captain said, yes. You smiled helplessly. We will be spending all month together, unless you don't want me here. You looked to the side and thought. Your mouth half open, so clearly you still wanted to say something. Though, I have to say, you finally admitted. Captain Brown is a hard ass, so more than likely if you reject me, he just leaves you in here alone. You look at the burned tusk before you. Considering the state I found you in earlier, I don't feel like that would be good for you, Captain.
From my perspective, I'm talking to a time traveler. And you treat me like a person. I like that.
You tilted your head confused.
You don't know me any other than this.
He raised his thumbs awkwardly.
But my crew did, and I became a burden. They dehumanized me, even though they didn't want to. It's natural. And I watched all of them deteriorate. I couldn't do anything from where I was.
You spent the next couple of days sitting there with Curly in the Tulpa's living quarter. When you weren't talking, you either swiped down the bar with a wet towel just to do something, or stared at the screen depicting a beach scene. It even changed in accordance to the time. It was neat. You assisted him with eating and drinking, even though it was kind of useless of a task in the virtual world. After all, both of you were fed through tubes in real space. It was when you were sitting on the sofa, staring at the screen, when suddenly you exclaimed, "Well, that's annoying." Curly looked at you questioningly. The two of you had been playing a game of chess. Thanks to the virtualness of the mindscape, simply saying where to move a piece was enough for them to go there, so he didn't need his hands to use the chessboard. Noticing your questioning look, you added, You noticed his questioning look, and you added, "There's a dead pixel up there." The silence that followed was deafening. "What's wrong? Shouldn't I have said that?" His eyes became even more bloodshot. You could tell he was holding back tears. He was shaking. And after a moment of anticipation, it cracked. He fell forward, sobbing, and he told you everything. From getting Pony Express to hire Jimmy, to his mental breakdown and the crash, and everything happening after it. What a terrible story. The fact that even now he was trying his best to hold back his tears, to not allow himself to cry, it stirred deeply within your soul. Honestly, it made you wish you were a genuine therapist. Maybe you could have given him some advice or a way to cope better. But instead, you could only hug him. Tightly, warmly, gently. His thumbs trying their best to fit around your body. But time was always a rather fickle mistress, and she had moved on, and the month went by faster than you expected. On the day you were woken up, leaving Curly alone in the mindscape for just a few minutes more, you saw his reconstructed body for the first time. As expected, the life gel couldn't perform miracles after all. His skin was back, his hair was back, he even had grown a few beard stubbles. You watched him lifted out of the gel and he awoke, his eye falling on you. You smiled and waved. But his torture wasn't over just yet. But this was the last time you'd seen him for a long while as well, so you needed to wait until his physical therapy was over to see him again. Curly was given prosthetic arms and legs, a grafted skin nose and grafted skin lips. And with all of that, you didn't see Curly again for 6 months. Try as you might asking the nurses, it always led to the answer that he was still alive, but they weren't allowed to give answers. And apparently the captain was verifying the story he told them of what happened on the Tulpa. Mostly just making sure that up until the crash everything had been properly documented. But one day, while you're sitting in your personal quarters, enjoying a sugar-free Fromp shake while watching TV, the quarters bell rung. When you opened the door, you saw a rather handsome middle-aged man, blonde, eye patch, mechanical arms and legs, and a nose that was just slightly off color from the rest of his body. I'm going out on a whim here and say, Curly?
You can lock your quarters,
He said, before saying hi.
Yeah, hi, Anastasia, I wanted to see you.
You smiled, tilting your head a little. Oh, that's surprising.
If it's a bad time, I can just...
No. I'm glad you haven't forgotten me. You played with your hair, shyly.
How could I?
He said faster than his brain could stop him.
I mean, we spent an entire month together. How could I forget you?
Sure, it's... You can come in, it's just a bit messy. I tend to scatter dirty clothes everywhere.
He chuckled. I doubt a little mess will shock me.
He said it so nonchalantly, with an almost smug expression, but
he understood the gravity of these words.
no, inside your quarters it was rather small. The Arctic was more akin to living in a bunker. Food was prepped by machines and given out in one of the 5 cafeterias on the ship, and otherwise only Fromp soda and Fromp-flavored gummy bears were accessible whenever desired to be eaten. Your space had space for 1-person bunk, with a TV screen, small square table, and 2 stools beneath it. A Fromtag advertising poster depicted a droid with a machine gun in its left and a soda can in its right hand, with the text, "Extra carbonated destruction only with Fromp," was hung on the empty wall. A small door led to what was the Arctic's interpretation of a bathroom, essentially a small shower that also worked as a toilet via an extendable seat and a metal locker for clothes. Half of which you had scattered on the very sparse floor. But Curly just didn't comment on them, and the 2 of you just sat down on the cramped space under your bed. I'm glad you healed fine. You look great. Curly nodded.
I'm glad too. I'm even more glad I was compatible with the prosthetics.
But as he looked at the blue-painted mechanical arms, his expression became a little grim.
But as expected, I'm an indentured servant now. We'll be working until my debt is paid off for the treatment and the therapy. It's good though, I'm a trained captain, so I'll be put on air delivery duty between planet-side factories. Captain Brown said, at least it won't be boring.
He smirked darkly.
And just like that, I'm back where I started. Fucking delivery flights.
Just on a smaller scale. After all, you won't be leaving bars. He made an expression that said, I haven't thought of it like that.
You have a point, he admitted. Plus, not like I'll be leaving the rig I arrive in. I'll basically just controlling several drones in a cozy little office.
You sighed and then smiled. That sounds much more better than my job. I'll have to babysit a squad of mining droids, make sure they don't cause cave-ins, and make sure they don't develop sentience.
Huh. That must be stressful.
You nodded. A lot of responsibility, but I've been doing this for 5 years, so I can handle it. Just, the mining part is new. I'm a little afraid.
Hearing the word responsibility made Curly's new nose twitch, but he managed to bury the feeling.
You know,
you never told me why you joined the colony ship. The way Captain Brown spoke of it, it's a one-way trip. Did something happen on Earth?
Well, of course something did happen. See, I have my own demons, you know. Just instead of a guy named Jim, his name is Brad. You exhaled sharply. Abusive ex, you know, all this typical crap, and I'm not going to deal with an abusive stalker before, you know, he can abuse me even more. So I jumped to the opportunity. Some might say it's overkill, but I say you proudly smiled. It's a choice I did myself. My first real choice as an adult that wasn't based on anyone else's suggestion. Curly smirked. Well, I guess I'm happy you're happy. Your own smile became warm. What about you? I think I can now appreciate having survived. I think I can be happy again. I think I can get over this. Of course, I'm not gonna lie, it will always be part of me. I lost my skin, but I'll be able to deal with it sometime down the line. I heard on the rig there are therapists. Just gotta, you know, sit out these last 2 months on this rust bucket until we arrive there and I can speak with them. It's also thanks to you I can do this, you know? You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. You blushed as you became sentimental. And what would that be? Hope. I realized something. Hope is just something you can't appreciate until you truly lose it. And you returned it to me. I appreciate it. In that case, I don't ever want to lose it. You smiled helplessly. Well, I guess that's a good motto. And I'd hate for you to lose it again. Your eyes met. There was a strange silence that followed. Both your eyes were twitching, trying to make sense of the other's expression. And then, in the same moment, your faces inched closer. Your noses touched and he was about to pull away, but quickly you grabbed the back of his head. Your lips touched. You contained the comment that his skin felt soft like a baby. After all, the sensation of his touch was very nice and gentle. His breath was calm, with mild amusement. You honestly had hoped for this outcome, and for a moment you separated. So, Anastasia, what's Fromtek's opinion on 2 employees getting it on? He asked with a pleasant smile. Well, HR doesn't like it. Mostly because separating couples among employees is considered a social faux pas. Of course, unless they break up. Oh, and there's no pregnancy leave. So, better use protection. You smirked at each other for a moment, like teenagers about to do something illegal for the very first time. Your foreheads bumped against each other as he leaned forward. Good. Well, it's a good thing we'll be working in the same rig together then, Anastasia. You're taking the words right out of my mouth, Captain Curly. He kissed you again, this time with more conviction, more passion. And it was much, much hotter. Your heart was racing as both of you knew what the other wanted. You couldn't wait for him to take off your jumpsuit. You couldn't wait for him to lay you down in your bed.
Wait! You shouted as you ran towards the elevator. The colorful toons inside desperately trying to keep the door open for as long as they dared, but the unmistakable sound of Claire de Lune echoing from right behind you was not reassuring. The others dodging deeper into the elevator once a pair of red eyes appeared in the hallway behind you. Come on, Lex, you thought as you rushed as quickly as you could. But no, please! The cone of light was beginning to become smaller and smaller until your little body slammed against the metal. Your outstretched arm just barely fitting into the gap of the elevator doors, but it didn't open again. You could see the others' fingers as they tried to pry open the door, but then it began to move. Horrified, you screamed as it went up. Desperately, you tried pulling your arm out, but soon you could feel the hard elevator floor push against your hand. Screaming for help, you were lifted into the air until your head hit against the ceiling. And then, crunch. Blinded by pain, you didn't even feel the fall. As you stared up, screaming at what used to be your arm, reduced to a stump. Black ichor spraying out of it. You would have lied there on the floor, screaming and writhing in pain if it wasn't for the heavy footsteps quickly coming closer. Adrenaline was pushing through your veins now as you rolled onto your stomach, wrapping your stomach into your rainbow-colored scarf before limping off into the darkness. Your name was Poof, a lamb tune. Your true primary colors, black and white. A thin layer of black fur was covering your entire body, while your torso and head were covered in thick wool, giving you the appearance of wearing a white wool sweater. With the white covering your head, making it look like you wore a hoodie. To give your body more color, your design had been given a rainbow-colored scarf, as well as pink sandals. You weren't a main character, only really appearing in 2 episodes in the background, for filler. Though there had been a short-lived 6-panel comic series on the backs of cereal boxes, which depicted your character as easy to frighten and breaking easily under pressure. The lessons you learned in these comics always ended on how to deal with anxiety. Well, now, all of those lessons were practically wiped away from your memory as you were running for desperate survival. Your scarf and wool covered in black ichor as you tried desperately to not cry so loud. The problem came from your tears and the darkness alike. You didn't know where you were running to. You just knew as long as your legs kept pushing you forward, you continued breathing. And it wasn't until you tripped over an empty soda pop can and your face meeting the floor that you remained still for a moment. You managed to not sob for a few seconds. You bit your lower lip as hard as you could, holding your breath. Your ears perked up. Silence. Dead silence. Exhaling, you clawed your way back on your feet. You were dizzy now, making your way towards a shelf. The floor you and your friends had found yourselves in had been used as a warehouse. Twisting hallways, concrete walls, crates, desks, computers, shelves, and offices. Your breaths came unrhythmically as you looked around, trying to find something that could help you. Until finally, through the darkness, you could faintly see a door leading into a small office room. Quickly you huddled forward. After closing the door behind yourself, you found what you were looking for. A stray medkit. The teal-colored box with a white cross on it was hanging on the wall. Shaking profusely, you opened it. The medical equipment practically falling right into your arm. Of course you weren't a trained medic, you never did this before. Plus you were a toon. Oh well. Biting down on a pencil, you removed your thumb from the scarf. Looking at what used to be a right arm was making you queasy. But if you didn't want to pass out from your ichor spraying everywhere, you needed to do this right here and now. There was no time to cry over it. At least, not now. You could always do that later. You wrapped 3 layers of gauze around your thumb before adding a compression bandage over it. The fact you managed to do this without passing out was a miracle. Your hand shaking, you then reached for the bottle of cheap painkillers, taking an entire mouthful, before shuttling over into the office's corner, quietly sobbing, in self-pity, self-defeat, pain. Tears streaming down your eyes while your breathing slowed as the pills made it so that the agony was slowly turning into a numb pounding. But the longer you sat there, the longer you could just wait there and think was a problem. Because all you could think of were the 101 ways you would find your immediate end, no matter how much you tried. It was so hopeless. You felt a mix of emotions. A part of you, the leftover adrenaline, wanted to make you run. Didn't matter where, as long as it was towards something bright and colorful. The other half of you wanted to be swallowed by the floor, to never have to think or worry about anything ever again. It was a pleasant thought, but alas, you needed to find a way out, no matter what. So against your better judgment, you stood up, fighting the immediate urge to vomit from the vertigo. Quietly you opened the door, peeking outside into the yawning abyss of the warehouse. Your heartbeat picked up again, vulnerable as you were. Quietly you took one step after the other. When you first entered the floor, you had split up with the others, making little teams. You and Toodles filled up the ichor extractors while the others, Goop and Boxton, collected Dandy's tapes and other items, as well as trying to distract any trusted ones. The plan had worked until you reached this floor with your group. You had watched Toodles be eviscerated by a very large twisted pebble, the rocky hound destroying the toon in seconds. You barely managed to escape it by hiding inside an open vent, like the coward that you were. The memory felt strangely distant right now, even though it happened just a few minutes ago. You rounded a corner trying to focus. Was this hallway familiar or not? You weren't sure, but then you heard it once more. Claire de Lune played over a broken music box. The twisted dandy had reappeared. At the other end of the darkened hallway, its large head was poking from the corner, petals swooshing in the air, eyes staring right at you. Dandy's pupils dilated, like those of a cat seeing a hapless mouse. Your reaction was instant. You turned on your heels and ran. But you were exhausted. You were in pain. And a little high from the painkillers. And even though Dandy's footsteps were becoming louder and louder, your body just wouldn't move any faster. And this time, you didn't trip. You just were too slow. Your entire body screamed as you felt pain rush over your back. The twisted one had swiped his claw over your behind. The force strong enough to throw you off balance. For a painful, slow moment, your body was in the air, only to then slam into a wall. Lying there for a moment, you were unable to move. Every nerve in your being was firing. Dandy grabbed you by the ankle, pulling you away. You could feel your face rub over the heartless concrete. But you had no more energy to fight. You tried your best, and your best wasn't good enough. It never was good enough. Dandy suddenly threw you, and you felt your body slam into a filing cabinet, spreading loose files everywhere. Weakly, you looked up at the flower monster as he approached. To your surprise, you actually recognized the room you were in now. Earlier, you had activated an ICO extractor in here. Your eyes shot to your right, where the machine silently stood. It was filled to the brim. A little bit of ichor was now pouring out of your mouth. As when you had made contact with the metal, you had bitten off a piece of your tongue. He then grabbed both of your legs, pulling you off the cabinet, his massive claws gripping your shoulders, tongue hanging out of his mouth as he hungrily stared you down. And then he clasped his mouth onto yours. Your eyes widened in fear. He used his teeth to pry open your lips. You shuddered. And the monstrosity took the opportunity to shove his massive tongue into your throat. Your eyes rolled back. It was swishing, swirling, wiggling like an alive eel, lapping up all the precious ichor and salvia in your mouth like a starving animal. Your left hand turned into a fist as it tried to look for bridges, even breaking one of your fingernails in the process. You uselessly kicked with your leg as it struggled in the monster's grasp. But the worst was still to come. Dandy pulled out of you, a thick, long, lecherous strand of liquid connecting your mouths. For a moment, the creature grinned down at you, his red eyes pulsating with violent intentions. Raising his claw from your stum, he gripped your scarf, tearing it off of you, for moving his long, sharp fingers through your wool. His razor-sharp talons just barely grazing your skin, making you shudder, until you felt his teeth sink into your shoulder. He held you in place with his mouth, using both hands to slide down your hips and tummy. When you got a little too low, you yelped, kicking him in the face as he released your shoulder. But that did you no good. He growled in quick bursts. He was laughing at your feeble attempt at self-defense. Something, even though he was amused by, he simply had to punish. He grabbed your face first, shoving you closer to the extractor. With two of his fingers, he twisted the release valve, spraying the black liquid into your face. forcing it down your throat. He made you drink the ichor, each swallow making you more and more nauseous, until the machine was half empty. When your seemingly lifeless body slipped to the ground, ichor was pouring out of your eyes, nose, even your fingernails. Your stomach was bloated. And then you began to violently shake. You could feel the liquid affecting your brain, your thoughts, your memories. You tried screaming, but only a thick blob of black substance shot out of your mouth, spraying all over the ground. And yet, even though you could feel every fiber of your being be soaking with ichor, you wanted more of it. The monstrous dandy was pleased with himself. As you had stopped struggling, finally, your body just lying there, ready for him to take. He licked your face clean before kissing you again and spreading your legs with his hands. Now, with your mind thoroughly shattered, he could do whatever he wanted with you. And he wouldn't want it any other way, as your now red glowing eyes stared into his. Sebastian knew what was going on here as his feet carried him over a seemingly endless sidewalk in an all too familiar mega city. The sky was grey and foreboding, bubbling with the intent to unleash a torrent of rain. The saboteur had his hands hidden in his pockets, turned to fists, mumbling so quietly to himself he couldn't even hear his own voice. "This isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real," he repeated like a mantra. This dream was the result of his memories and experiences of the day. He knew that. And a parasite he had been infected with, God knows how long ago. The parasite went by the name of X-3232. The creature was theorized to have arrived with the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. X-32X-32 was what appeared to be the parlarvae of a squid, but DNA-wise it had more similarity with regular Earth bugs. These creatures, due to their small size, could freely move around in a human body, and especially in a body as regenerative as that of Sebastian. These things had free reign. The race had no gender until infection, taking on the biological opposite of their host upon feeding on them for the first time, using their DNA counterpart to fertilize the next generation. Or in other words, both males and females of the species produced and laid fertilized eggs. It made Sebastian wonder how many thousands of babies he already had with the creature inside him. The parasite's existence was given away by his dreams. Of course, awake him didn't know what happened in them. According to the documentation, however, and his own experience upon waking up, a feeling of satisfaction was always there. He felt good. The dreams were apparently really pleasurable. But as he looked up at the grey skyscrapers and bustling streets filled with mere shadows of what a human looked like, this was rather unpleasant. Like the parasite's interpretation of a nightmare. But why would the parasite give him a nightmare? This seemed to be opposite to what it intended. Sebastian had awoken in the harbor, stranded, his clothes dry, human body regained, but the city, it was familiar. It was New York, where he had lived so long ago. Well, after he woke up, he might as well go home, right?
little nostalgia trip. Would probably be a little uplifting, right? That's at least what he was thinking. He stopped suddenly on his walk, his gaze going left to right. Yeah, he remembered this street. It was close to home, just a few more blocks. He remembered it because of the homeless encampment just below him in the sewers, and its entrance was... He turned right. Faceless ghosts dressed in rags stood around lit barrels and tents. There were shopping carts filled with garbage and scrap. Cardboard boxes with feet sticking out of them. Unsure whether or not the person inside was dead or alive. Sebastian wondered if 3232 had enough information of his previous life to manifest a version of a man who just went by the name of Hobo Joe. Crafty little shit, who managed to steal a key off of one of his neighbors, giving him access to at least the main building where he lived. Sebastian had met the guy multiple times in the apartment's lobby and basement. He wasn't a bad guy, just some dude looking for shelter. There was an unwritten rule in the entire apartment complex. Just don't go into the basement after 12, that's when Hobo Joe went to sleep. And if he touches you, just say no, like to an unruly puppy, and he will then leave you alone. And he actually followed these rules to a T. Nostalgia. Sebastian smiled and went down a few more familiar roads. Until he grunted. There it was. A red, run-down apartment building. His hands automatically reached for his pants and, like magic, the keys were there. Even though they hadn't been there when he awoke in the harbor. And the key fit perfectly. Better than it ever did. He chuckled and entered. The lobby lights flickered, and it was cold. Just how he remembered it. With his head hung low, he walked past a human-shaped shadow lying on the floor in the fetal position. Well, seems like Hobo Joe was accounted for, even if it was in that form. Slowly but surely, Sebastian ascended to the 6th floor, stopping himself at the coin-based electricity box next to his apartment. With the same dream logic, money now began to appear in his pockets as he pulled out a few coins. They had no labeling on them, just vaguely at the size of a $50 coin. Once the timer on the machine said 24 hours, he stepped away and pushed the second key into the keyhole, closing the door to his apartment behind himself. Sebastian sighed, exhausted. A feeling of being watched had followed him until now, and, well, it wasn't letting go. But he was feeling a little safer here. His apartment was a dingy little thing. 3 doors in a narrow hallway led to a kitchen, a bathroom, and the living room, where his bed was situated, as well as his computer desk. Additionally, the living room also had a glass door leading to a balcony. Not sure what to do now, he started his regular routine of work, just like back then when he was human. He threw his jacket in the corner, stepped into the kitchen, and heated up a packaged cheeseburger while pouring himself a glass of soda. Then a bathroom break, followed by the microwave going ding, and a depressing meal in front of the TV. Of course, the dream just depicted a strange mishmash of random ads he remembered from his childhood, completely chaotic and cut up. Honestly, if he was high, this probably would have great entertainment value. Sebastian was actually finding some enjoyment in this dream. It was normal. Compared to what his life had become, it was even pleasant. Nostalgic. Though, The fact that at some point he had to wake up was kinda souring it. Sighing deeply, he reached for a pack of smokes on his living room table when a knocking on his door threw him off. He slowly looked towards the door. Sebastian had a neighbor who hated him and always started pounding on his door if he dared to be just slightly too noisy to his liking. God, was that guy pissed off when he got headphones. Shouting at Sebastian was his only joy in life, and Sebastian just had to ruin it by doing exactly what the guy wanted. The beautiful anvil of irony. Snickering to himself at the memory, the man stood up and walked to the door. But as he opened it, he wasn't met by a shadow resembling his noisy neighbor. No, it was you, X3232. And also the only other thing in this dream world that had full human features. You are dressed in ugly brown and grey clothes that were covered in holes and dirt. Square-shaped glasses, one of them cracked, sitting on your nose. You wore a grey beanie, pulled down so far it just barely covered your long elf ears. You wore grey, fingerless gloves and a dirty green shirt. Suspiciously, Sebastian narrowed his eyes. I'm guessing you are... He was interrupted by you wrapping yourself around him, breaking out into loud, ugly sobs. Surprised, Sebastian blinked, taking a step back. He closed the door behind you. For a moment he stood there while you cried into him. Awkwardly so. All right, that's enough. He gently pushed you off of him while you rubbed your eyes into the gloves. Let's start with the simple fact. Who are you?
I was so scared. I don't know where I was.
You tapped your fingers together.
I awoke in a paper box, dressed like this.
You spread your arms to show your outfit.
And there were these scary things everywhere, staring at me. And then I saw you, host. I was so happy, but you didn't see me and just kept walking. The things, there were so many of them.
Sebastian slapped a hand on your mouth, and you went quiet. I'm guessing you're... that thing? He grumbled as he pointed a finger at his head, and you nodded. Annoyed, Sebastian rubbed his eyes. Judging by your reaction, this isn't the first time we met.
It isn't,
you said after he removed his hand.
You keep forgetting our times together.
Sebastian rubbed his shoulder, annoyed. Great, so, how do I wake up? Kinda getting sick of this. You tilted your head. With an innocent expression and a little blush, you said meekly,
Well, you just do it, and after you finish a few times, you...
Wait, we have... He made an obscene hand gesture, and you nodded. Exhausted, he inhaled through his mouth, and after exhaling, Yeah, not now, he muttered. Turning around, hands in his pockets, he walked into his apartment, and upon reaching the doorframe to his living room, you started following him. You watched him grab his cigarettes and wordlessly go onto the balcony, you closely behind him. He took out a cigarette and gave you one before searching through his pockets. And a minute later he went, here we go. But as he pulled out his lighter, he watched you chewing, with the cigarette missing from your lips. Wait, did you just... You stopped chewing. Did you just eat that? Embarrassed, you blushed.
Wasn't I supposed to?
You said with a full mouth. Sighing, Sebastian grabbed his ashtray. Come on, Spit it out. All of it. There we go. Amused, he lit his own cigarette. You don't eat these, he said casually. You inhale them. You watched as he demonstrated, and then blew a big cloud of stinking smoke at your face. Gagging, you whipped it out of your face. Alright, so you don't like it. That's good to know, he said as he sat down on his outdoor garden chair, twiddling your fingers while he continued. Really counterproductive, this forgetting thing, huh? Makes it awkward sometimes, you admitted. Especially since I never know what worlds you conjure, but I think it helps you that in the dreams you're a different person, so you know from the get-go something is off. I suppose. He tapped the smoke against the ashtray before putting it back in his mouth. Host, what is this place? You asked, voice laden with fear and sadness. It's home. Where I lived before I got into that mess. He looked down at the streets, though now it was nothing but a gaping void from up here. Or more, vague random memories put together. He pointed south towards the Statue of Liberty. For example, I'm pretty sure that thing is smaller in real life than I remember. And those two buildings over there, he pointed into another direction towards two towers. They're not here anymore. And it's a dead giveaway that something isn't right here. Shadow monsters aside, I suppose. Sebastian chuckled at your comment. Well, I guess you can call them shadow monsters, but that's just how people in the city see others and their memories. At least the ones you don't interact with. It actually felt a little normal, even if it was a little scary at first. You narrowed your eyes. Are humans sad, host? Sebastian raised an eyebrow, at first not fully understanding what you meant, but now that he thought about it, this was a surprisingly deep question for someone who didn't even know how to properly smoke. Though, then again, it also was an innocent question, like a child asking why the sky is blue. It was strangely endearing, though. Truth be told, I won't be touching a question with a 10-foot pole. He grinned, throwing away the cigarette butt. He exhaled one more time, and leaned casually against the railing. So, is there a reason the world is this right now? I don't remember going to bed feeling particularly sad. It's the radio song. Your mind conjured up images of this place when you heard that radio song earlier today. He raised an eyebrow. Radio song. It had been in the morning, while Sebastian had been flicking through Urban Shade radio chatter for fun when he found the company radio. It played a happy little ditty from the 70s. I guess music just sticks with me, you said. And it must have had an influence on your mind. I see. The saboteur walked past you into the living room, looking at his computer setup. Want to know a little fact? I played old Frank Sinatra when I wrote the program that hacked into Urban Shade servers all those years ago. Gently brushed over his old keyboard. Sebastian smiled. I suppose this dream is my memory of that day. Well, it was in autumn, I guess. Would explain the weather. Some of the apartments started to feel a little brighter now. Host? He asked questioningly at his strange expression. So, 3232. Do you, need to eat or something while you're here? You shook your head.
I already ate.
Good, I just ate the last burger. He brushed off your I already ate comment. He didn't want to think about you sucking his blood. He casually sat down on his sofa, while you awkwardly sat a further away at the corner. And he noticed. So how does this usually go, huh? You blushed.
You just do it.
How come?
My appearance is based on what you enjoy the most.
He looked you up and down skeptically. Yeah, right. He leaned forward and pulled off the beanie, making you reveal beautiful golden hair to him. And your elf ears. Sebastian held sharply. Oh, I get it now. He grabbed your shoulders, pulling you down with him. Looking at Sebastian, breathing slowly through his mouth. His hands slipping past the thick brown drifter jacket you wore directly to that ugly green sweater of yours. His hands slid down your body lecherously, and he smirked. I get it now, he said, while his hands brushed over the outline of your chest. I admit, I'd dress like that too if I was a sexy little elf trying to hide in a homeless camp of all things. He bit his lower lip. Something about that really was doing it for him, as he could feel his pants tighten almost immediately upon the realization. Alright. I gotta admit, he purred after getting a lustful squeal out of you after pinching you just right. One good thing about you is that I get to do you first every time over and over again. That sounds nice. He purred. And God, his smirk, it was so sexy.
Thank you for enjoying yourself, my host. It's all I want, really.
You purred. Say, why do you call me host? You tilted your head.
Because you are my host. I'm inside you, and...
He put a finger on your mouth. Instinctually, you started sucking it, which made him chuckle. His past dream selves trained you well. But you talking about being inside him was kinda making him feel icky. Well, I mean, sure, I'm your host, but why not just call me Sebastian? You pulled away from his finger, leaving a long line of salvia as you popped off of him.
That topic came up already,
you said with lustfully narrowed eyes.
I agreed, but then you said, wait, how will I identify you in the future dreams? How will I identify you in future dreams?
He nodded. Considering he instantly realized who you were the moment you called him host, that made sense. I suppose that was smart of me. You leaned down, brushing your head against his cheek like a cat in heat.
You're always smart, my beloved host.
His hands gripped your hips tightly, making you shiver in delight. Before he turned you around, pinning you down on the sofa. Well, considering how this works, you won't be needing these anymore. He growled lustfully, grabbing the shirt. His knuckles turned white as he ripped open the sweater in a single display of his strength. And he gasped at the sight of your chest. He nodded slowly as you gave him a coy smile.
I know you can't resist them, my beloved host. And...
Your comment was interrupted by his greedy hands, kneading them. Your chest was so sensitive it made your entire body shiver in pleasure.
Host.
His lips clashed onto yours. Your eyes rolled back, your entire body wiggling against him. He was in control, and you delighted in that. Sebastian kept his tongue in his mouth for now. After all, he would not remember this, so might as well take full advantage of this delicious buffet before him. Oh, shit. Sebastian's heavy snake body raised itself from the mattress. He was out of breath, sweat running down his forehead. The saboteur exhaled. His heart was racing, and his privates had come out of their little pouch. He was shaking. It felt as if he had just done the deed, or at least was interrupted in the middle of it. He rubbed his throat. It tickled there, and then he coughed again. Seems as if he might have gotten some spittle into the wrong pipe. He leaned back against the wall of his hiding spot. What the hell had he been dreaming about? Not even his ex could get his body excited like this. But he was starting to like it. Starting to maybe not want the parasite removed. And you probably couldn't understand him, but... Hey, sorry for interrupting whatever we were doing, okay? I can see that I was having a lot of fun. God, I hope you can hear me. Sebastian knew what was going on here as his feet carried him over a seemingly endless sidewalk in an all-too-familiar megacity. The sky was grey and foreboding, bubbling with the intent to unleash a torrent of rain that would drown the streets and turn every one of the people-like shapes into wet zombies. The saboteur had his hands hidden in his pockets, turned to fists, mumbling so quietly to himself he couldn't even hear his own voice. This isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real, he repeated like a mantra. This dream was the result of his memories and experiences of the day. He knew that. And a parasite he had been infected with, God knows how long ago, was making this dream more vivid, more alive, while also taking any control he had over it away. No, this wasn't a lucid dream despite his awareness. The parasite went by the name of X-3232. The creature was theorized to have arrived with the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. They were so small, when fully grown, they were just barely visible by the naked eye. And their eggs were diamond-hard micro-pebbles that could survive almost any environment. Well, obviously they would melt in lava and potentially burn in the sun, but they could survive the vacuum of space, and even stayed alive and fertile even after being exposed to absolute zero temperatures. What hatched from these eggs, X-32, was what appeared to be the larvae of a squid, but DNA-wise it had more similarity with regular Earth bugs. These creatures, due to their small size, could freely move around in a human body, and especially in a body as regenerative as that of Sebastian. These things had free reign. The race had no gender until infection, taking on the biological opposite of their host upon feeding on them for the first time, using their DNA counterpart to fertilize the next generation. Or in other words, both males and females of the species produced and laid fertilized eggs. It made Sebastian wonder how many thousands of babies he already had with the creature inside him. The parasite's existence was given away by his dreams. Of course, awake him didn't know what happened in them. According to the documentation, however, and his own experience upon waking up, a feeling of satisfaction was always there. He felt good. The dreams were apparently really pleasurable. But as he looked up at the grey skyscrapers and bustling streets filled with mere shadows of what a human looked like, this was rather unpleasant. Like The parasite's interpretation of a nightmare. But why would the parasite give him a nightmare? This seemed to be opposite to what it intended. Sebastian had awoken in the harbor, stranded. His clothes dry, human body regained, but the city, it was familiar. It was New York, where he had lived so long ago. Well, after he woke up, he might as well go home, right? Little nostalgia trip. Would probably be a little uplifting, right? That's at least what he was thinking. He stopped suddenly on his walk, his gaze going left to right. Yeah, he remembered this street. It was close to home, just a few more blocks. He remembered it because of the homeless encampment just below him in the sewers, and its entrance was... He turned right. Faceless ghosts dressed in rags stood around lit barrels and tents. There were shopping carts filled with garbage and scrap. Cardboard boxes with feet sticking out of them. Unsure whether or not the person inside was dead or alive. Sebastian wondered if 3232 had enough information of his previous life to manifest a version of a man who just went by the name of Hobo Joe. Crafty little shit, who managed to steal a key off of one of his neighbors, giving him access to at least the main building where he lived. Sebastian had met the guy multiple times in the apartment's lobby and basement. He wasn't a bad guy, just some dude looking for shelter. There was an unwritten rule in the entire apartment complex. Just don't go into the basement after 12, that's when Hobo Joe went to sleep. And if he touches you, just say no, like to an unruly puppy, and he will then leave you alone. And he actually followed these rules to a T. Nostalgia. Sebastian smiled and went down a few more familiar roads. Until he grunted. There it was. A red, run-down apartment building. His hands automatically reached for his pants and, like magic, the keys were there. Even though they hadn't been there when he awoke in the harbor. And the key fit perfectly. Better than it ever did. He chuckled and entered. The lobby lights flickered, and it was cold. Just so he remembered it. With his head hung low, he walked past a human-shaped shadow lying on the floor in the fetal position. Well, seems like Hobo Joe was accounted for, even if it was in that form. Slowly but surely, Sebastian ascended to the 6th floor, stopping himself at the coin-based electricity box next to his apartment. With the same dream logic, money now began to appear in his pockets as he pulled out a few coins. They had no labeling on them, just vaguely at the size of a $50 coin. Once the time on the machine said 24 hours, he stepped away and pushed the second key into the keyhole, closing the door to his apartment behind himself. Sebastian sighed, exhausted. A feeling of being watched had followed him until now, and, well, it wasn't letting go. But he was feeling a little safer here. His apartment was a dingy little thing. 3 doors in a narrow hallway led to a kitchen, a bathroom, and the living room, where his bed was situated, as well as his computer desk. Additionally, the living room also had a glass door leading to a balcony. Not sure what to do now, he started his regular routine of work, just like back then when he was human. He threw his jacket in the corner, stepped into the kitchen, and heated up a packaged cheeseburger while pouring himself a glass of soda. then a bathroom break, followed by the microwave going ding, and a depressing meal in front of the TV. Of course, the dream just depicted a strange mishmash of random ads he remembered from his childhood, completely chaotic and cut up. Honestly, if he was high, this probably would have great entertainment value. Sebastian was actually finding some enjoyment in this dream. It was normal. Compared to what his life had become, it was even pleasant, nostalgic. Though, the fact that at some point he had to wake up was kinda souring it. Sighing deeply, he reached for a pack of smokes on his living room table when a knocking on his door threw him off. He slowly looked towards the door. Sebastian had a neighbor who hated him, and always started pounding on his door if he dared to be just slightly too noisy to his liking. God, was that guy pissed off when he got headphones. Shouting at Sebastian was his only joy in life, and Sebastian just had to ruin it by doing exactly what the guy wanted. The beautiful anvil of irony. Snickering to himself at the memory, the man stood up and walked to the door. But as he opened it, he wasn't met by a shadow resembling his noisy neighbor. No, it was you, X3232. And also the only other thing in this dream world that had full human features. You are dressed in ugly brown and grey clothes that were covered in holes and dirt. Square-shaped glasses, one of them cracked, sitting on your nose. You wore a grey beanie, pulled down so far it just barely covered your long elf ears. You wore grey, fingerless gloves and a dirty green shirt. Suspiciously, Sebastian narrowed his eyes. I'm guessing you are... He was interrupted by you wrapping yourself around him, breaking out into loud, ugly sobs. Surprised, Sebastian blinked, taking a step back. He closed the door behind you. For a moment he stood there while you cried into him. Awkwardly so. Alright, that's enough. He gently pushed you off of him while you rubbed your eyes into the gloves. Let's start with the simple fact. Who are you?
I was so scared. I don't know where I was.
You tapped your fingers together.
I awoke in a paper box, dressed like this.
You spread your arms to show your outfit.
And there were these scary things everywhere, staring at me. And then I saw you, host. I was so happy, but you didn't see me and just kept walking. The things, there were so many of them.
Sebastian slapped a hand on your mouth, and you went quiet. I'm guessing you're... that thing? He grumbled as he pointed a finger at his head, and you nodded. Annoyed, Sebastian rubbed his eyes. Judging by your reaction, this isn't the first time we met.
It isn't,
you said after you removed his hand.
You keep forgetting our times together.
Sebastian rubbed his shoulder, annoyed. Great, so, how do I wake up? Kinda getting sick of this. You tilted your head. With an innocent expression and a little blush, you said meekly,
well, you just do it, and after you finish a few times, you...
Wait, we have... He made an obscene hand gesture, and you nodded. Exhausted, he inhaled through his mouth, and after exhaling, yeah, not now, he muttered. Turning around, hands in his pockets, he walked into his apartment, and upon reaching the doorframe to his living room, you started following him. You watched him grab his cigarettes and wordlessly go onto the balcony, you closely behind him. He took out a cigarette and gave you one before searching through his pockets. And a minute later he went, here we go. But as he pulled out his lighter, he watched you chewing, with the cigarette missing from your lips. Wait, did you just... You stopped chewing. Did you just eat that? Embarrassed, you blushed.
Wasn't I supposed to?
You said with a full mouth. Sighing, Sebastian grabbed his ashtray. Come on, spit it out. All of it. There we go. Amused, he lit his own cigarette. You don't eat these, he said casually. You inhale them. You watched as he demonstrated, and then blew a big cloud of stinking smoke at your face. Gagging, you whipped it out of your face. Alright, so you don't like it. That's good to know, he said as he sat down on his outdoor garden chair, twiddling your fingers while he continued. Really counterproductive, this forgetting thing, huh? Makes it awkward sometimes, you admitted. Especially since I never know what worlds you conjure, but I think it helps you that in the dreams you're a different person, so you know from the get-go something is off. I suppose. He tapped the smoke against the ashtray before putting it back in his mouth. Host, what is this place? You asked, voice laden with fear and sadness. It's home. Where I lived before I got into that mess. He looked down at the streets, though now it was nothing but a gaping void from up here. Or more, vague random memories put together. He pointed south towards the Statue of Liberty. For example, I'm pretty sure that thing is smaller in real life than I remember. And those two buildings over there, he pointed into another direction towards two towers. They're not here anymore. And it's a dead giveaway that something isn't right here. Shadow monsters aside, I suppose. Sebastian chuckled at your comment. Well, I guess you can call them shadow monsters, but that's just how people in the city see others and their memories. At least the ones you don't interact with. It actually felt a little normal, even if it was a little scary at first. You narrowed your eyes. Are humans sad, host? Sebastian raised an eyebrow, at first not fully understanding what you meant, but now that he thought about it, this was a surprisingly deep question for someone who didn't even know how to properly smoke. Though, then again, it also was an innocent question, like a child asking why the sky is blue. It was strangely endearing, though. Truth be told, I won't be touching that question with a 10-foot pole. He grinned, throwing away the cigarette butt. He exhaled one more time, and leaned casually against the railing. So, is there a reason the world is this right now? I don't remember going to bed feeling particularly sad. It's the radio song. Your mind conjured up images of this place when you heard that radio song earlier today. He raised an eyebrow. Radio song. It had been in the morning, while Sebastian had been flicking through Urban Shade radio chatter for fun when he found the company radio. It played a happy little ditty from the 70s. I guess music just sticks with me, you said. And it must have had an influence on your mind. I see. The saboteur walked past you into the living room, looking at his computer setup. Wanna know a little fact? I played old Frank Sinatra when I wrote the program that hacked into Urban Shade servers all those years ago. Gently he brushed over his old keyboard. Sebastian smiled. I suppose this dream is my memory of that day. Well, it was in autumn, I guess. Would explain the weather. Some of the apartments started to feel a little brighter now. Host? He asked questioningly at his strange expression. So, 3232. Do you, need to eat or something while you're here? You shook your head. I already ate. Good, I just ate the last burger. He brushed off your I already ate comment. He didn't want to think about you sucking his blood. He casually sat down on his sofa, where you awkwardly sat a further away at the corner. And he noticed. So how does this usually go, huh? You blushed. You just do it. How come? My appearance is based on what you enjoy the most. He looked you up and down skeptically. Yeah, right. He leaned forward and pulled off the beanie, making you reveal beautiful golden hair to him. And your elf ears. Sebastian held sharply. Oh, I get it now. He grabbed your shoulders, pulling you down with him. Looking at Sebastian, breathing slowly through his mouth. His hands slipping past the thick, brown drifter jacket you wore, directly to that ugly green sweater of yours. His hands slid down your body lecherously, and he smirked. I get it now, he said, while his hands brushed over the outline of your chest. I admit, I'd dress like that too if I was a sexy little elf trying to hide in a homeless camp of all things. He bit his lower lip. Something about that really was doing it for him, as he could feel his pants tighten almost immediately upon the realization. Alright. I gotta admit, he purred after getting a lustful squeal out of you after pinching you just right. One good thing about you is that I get to do you first every time over and over again. That sounds nice. He purred. And God, his smirk, it was so sexy. Thank you for enjoying yourself, my host. It's all I want, really. You purred. Say, why do you call me host? You tilted your head. Because you are my host. I'm inside you, and... He put a finger on your mouth. Instinctually, you started sucking it, which made him chuckle. His past dream selves trained you well. But you talking about being inside him was kinda making him feel icky. Well, I mean, sure, I'm your host, but why not just call me Sebastian? You pulled away from his finger, leaving a long line of salvia as you popped off of him. That topic came up already, you said with lustfully narrowed eyes. I agreed, but then you said, wait, how will I identify you in the future dreams? Wait, how will I identify you in future dreams? He nodded. Considering he instantly realized who you were the moment you called him host, that made sense. I suppose that was smart of me. You leaned down, brushing your head against his cheek like a cat in heat. You're always smart, my beloved host. His hands gripped your hips tightly, making you shiver in delight. Before he turned you around, pinning you down on the sofa. Well, considering how this works, you won't be needing these anymore. He growled lustfully, grabbing the shirt. His knuckles turned white as he ripped open the sweater in a single display of his strength. And he gasped at the sight of your chest. He nodded slowly as you gave him a coy smile. I know you can't resist them, my beloved host. And your comment was interrupted by his greedy hands, kneading them. Your chest was so sensitive it made your entire body shiver in pleasure.
Host.
His lips clashed onto yours. Your eyes rolled back, your entire body wiggling against him. He was in control, and you delighted in that. Sebastian kept his tongue in his mouth for now. After all, he would not remember this, so might as well take full advantage of this delicious buffet before him. Oh shit! Sebastian's heavy snake body raised itself from the mattress. He was out of breath, sweat running down his forehead. The saboteur exhaled. His heart was racing, and his privates had come out of their little pouch. He was shaking. It felt as if he had just done the deed, or at least was interrupted in the middle of it. He rubbed his throat. It tickled there, and then he coughed again. Seems as if he might have gotten some spittle into the wrong pipe. He leaned back against the wall of his hiding spot. What the hell had he been dreaming about? Not even his ex could get his body excited like this. But he was starting to like it. Starting to maybe not want the parasite removed. And you probably couldn't understand him, but... Hey, sorry for interrupting whatever we were doing, okay? I can see that I was having a lot of fun. God, I hope you can hear me.
Some toys had it better than others. When the hour of joy happened, and sometime after beneath the wrathful gaze of the prototype, children and some adults were turned into bigger bodies. Still. But what was probably the worst thing to happen to some of the unfortunate people was the lack of proper guidance post-operation. You are one of these. Your creation was interrupted by the hour of joy itself, and your awakening, as rude as it could be in your new toy body, had been as difficult as it could be. The new plastic exoskeleton, the mental strain with everything going wrong. It wasn't even the complete eradication of your memories and former life that broke you. It was the hunger. Starving, bleeding from wounds caused by your body partially rejecting the changes. You became a monster in the shape of a Cynthia Deluxe doll. The Deluxe dolls were luxury dolls utilizing actual hair from the children who ordered them, as well as expensive designer outfits. They were more of a collector's item really than a toy. The intention behind you was marketing, but of course that had fallen apart before it even really began. You weren't naked and afraid for long though, as your path through the factory was paved in blood, bones, and viscera. Picking your fights carefully, you became an ambush predator. Even in the early stages post-Hour of Joy, you were among the toys not loyal to anyone. For it was eat or be eaten. You were a thorn in the side of the prototype, or at least until Poppy's rebellion began in full, and he could use you and other bigger bodies to his advantage. Sure, you were a chaos factor, but essentially anything that crossed your path, you first saw as food, and then as an equal second. And it remained like this for a very long time. At least until he forgot about you. But that only led to your evolution. Hunger drove you to improvise, adapt, and overcome. dressed in the hide of multiple slain, smiling creatures, sewn together by primitive bone tools, equipped with a spear forged from office equipment. You had set traps, slept only for very short periods, and you relished every second of it. While starting out feral, your human ingenuity had somehow managed to return, and you became more dangerous than ever before. You lived at the halls below Playcare, beyond any chance of escape due to the red gas that would mean certain doom to you. You stayed away from the automatons from the doctor, knowing metal was not edible, hiding in one of the lesser accessible cells where you set up a small camp. The doctor was aware of your existence, but paid you no mind. The loss of life that came from your existence was negligible, and you never interfered with operations. Until now. It all changed when you and Yarnaby encountered each other. A chance encounter. If anything, Dr. Sawyer was surprised this didn't happen sooner.
Well, that's the problem with third parties, Yarnaby. You never know how dumb they truly are,
Commented the doctor over the speakers. Spear in hand, you stood before the rainbow lion, his massive head twitched, salvia dropping from his vertical mouth.
Very well, Yarnaby. Get rid of this interloper once and for all. She must not interfere with our experiments.
The beast roared. You of course understood the meaning of the words, while their exact understanding eluded you. Already prepped for an attack, your muscle tension increased.
Crush her. That's an order.
Yarnaby growled, and you stood still. Muscles strained. Breath calm and measured. Your spear firm in your grasp, its metal tip glistening in the faint light of the prison complex's lamps. Across from you, Yarnaby prowled left to right, sizing you up. His shiny plastic face locked onto you, muscles stiff beneath the plushy hide. Then, without warning, Yarnaby exploded with violent intent forward. You braced yourself, angling the tip of the spear forward, aiming for the rainbow lion's chest. Yarnaby lunged, twisting in the air mid-jump, swiping his massive paw. The spear's edge barely raking across the giant's hips, drawing blood as you attempted to dodge. But just as the blade was about to slide out of Yarnaby, the pressure against the spear became too much. It bent and then broke. As the force staggered you down on the ground, air pressed out of your lungs. You couldn't move for a moment. Meanwhile, Yarnaby became enraged, barely feeling the pain from his torn flesh and pelt. Not stopping, the lion crawled forward, jaws snapping, and you barely managed to roll away from his mighty stomp. Exhausted, you went on your feet. Reaching for your belt, you drew your second tool of death, a shank made out of a broken, sharpened piece of piping and some duct tape. The beast's muscles rippled. This time you met Yarnaby head-on, sidestepping him in the last moment, driving the shank deep into Yarnaby's flank. He bellowed in pain, but twisted his front legs and managed to rake his brutal claws across your chest. You screamed as your plastic and flesh was torn, the force alone sending you onto the floor. You gritted your teeth, rolling away just as Yarnaby poised for a new attack, claws carving into the concrete floor. Scrambling on your feet, you barely managed to lift the shank before the rainbow lion leaped into the air again. The impact was brutal, and you broke a few bones as your back connected with the floor. It would have killed you if you weren't a toy. Snarling, screaming, Yarnaby stomped onto your chest, his weight crushing you, while his jaws snapped and barked at your face. You couldn't move. And then... snap! Yarnaby's jaws clasped around your left shoulder. And with a mighty pull, you watched as your arm was torn from your body. But you still had the knife in the other hand. With the light in your eyes fading quickly, you stabbed Yarnaby's throat. Not deep, but just enough that lying required immediate medical attention. A fountain of blood sprayed onto your face. And that was the last image you saw before your own blood loss made you pass out. And you're saying if I sign this, I become a toy? A female voice said skeptically. Like full on. Not just some girl in a suit? Yes. You would be part of our most luxurious doll line ever created. You would be an icon. Everybody would adore you. The woman's gaze returned to the contract. What if I don't sign it? Then you will be returned to the office with an NDA and your career reaches a permanent dead end, Miss Delilah. This is a one-time chance. The woman gulped. A luxury doll, you say? Can I at least choose which one? Of course, Miss Delilah. Don't worry about that. Everything will be fine. Okay, then. I trust you, Doctor. You jolted awake from the memory, its after images already fading in your brain. Your chest hurt. In fact, your entire body hurt. You could barely breathe. With a haunted expression, you looked around the room. It was a quarter cell. A more pleasant variant of the regular toy holding cells. This one had a bed and a desk with a chair, and a clock that had stopped at 6:40 in the morning or evening. Didn't matter anymore, really. You didn't know why or how you were alive, but the fact you were captured meant the worst. Dumbfounded, you raised your left arm. It had returned to you. But it wasn't in a way you expected. It looked skeletal and grey. It was quite hard. It clicked with every movement and you couldn't quite feel the tips of your fingers. It reacted like a regular arm. With a finger from your right, you brushed over it. Metal. It was vibrating and was a little warm. Your eyes narrowed and you went against your better judgment, immediately rolling out of bed. Realizing you were naked, you ripped the cloth off the dirty pillow and quickly fashioned a loincloth and a primitive bra. Using your new arm, you broke off one of the desk's legs. It was much stronger than the old one. Impressed, you nodded. Yeah, you can work with this. Not having a hammer or a rock to beat the metal leg into shape, you instead used the weight of the metal bed frame to press a very primitive handle into your new club. It felt terrible in your hand, even after using your leftover cloth rags to make a soft handle. But it was better than nothing. The doctor, meanwhile, had carefully watched every move you made the moment you had awoken. He was curious. Tearing apart one of his own very limited automatons to risk a life-saving surgery on you wasn't a decision he made lightly. But seeing you armed with a functional weapon in less than an hour after waking from such terrible damage, that was impressive. But why did Dr. Sawyer chose to save your life? It was the lion. Your little neck stab barely did any damage, just able to penetrate the fluff of his skin. The blood was really the only thing that was a problem here. It was quite the nasty wound, but easy to fix. But this is what the lion did after you stopped moving. Yarnaby nudged you. Dr. Sawyer was convinced the moment you were vulnerable, he'd rip you apart and devour you, but no. Yarnaby made the most adorable little whimper, nudging what seemed to be a corpse, before himself falling over to the side. He himself now slowly succumbing to his wounds. But the doctor had seen enough. Your mutual destruction was mesmerizingly beautiful to him, and so he retrieved both of your bodies to fix them. You got a new arm and had your wounds fixed, Yarnaby stitched up again, both of you needing blood transfusions as well, wasting a lot of plasma. Alright. Let's see what happens when I press this button. The doctor mumbled to himself. The automaton poised behind the door to your cell awoke, and with a loud alarm sound, it pressed the button, opening the door, slowly. Scared, you pushed as far as you could into the corner of the room, readying your club. Meanwhile, opposite to your cell, another one opened, revealing Yarnaby's very own holding cell. The lion was prancing from left to right restlessly. His eyes were focused immediately on you. He recognized you, of course. After a minute passed, he approached. Slowly, head low, tail swooshing left to right. Your muscles tensed, but then you coughed, falling forward on your knees. The pain in your chest was too much, yet moved too much. Maybe you should have lied in bed longer. Grunting, clenching your teeth, you rubbed over the melted plastic scars in your chest. By the time you finished coughing, a shadow loomed above you. With a haunted expression, you stared up at Yarnaby, who was inspecting your face. A noise came from him, a mix of a growl, a purr, and sniffing. Slowly he lowered his head. His vertical jaws opened, revealing the pulsating wet red of his mouth. There was a little tentacle-like flesh tube in the middle. Just like the mask that was his face, it too was lined with smaller teeth. It was his real mouth. The way his Venus flytrap-esque mouth functioned was that meat was bitten into the shell of the face before the second mouth then slowly devoured it. His second pair of lips were twisted to the side into a sort of half moon. It was quite hard to tell if it was a smile or a frown. And then quickly, like a snake, the second mouth shot forward, stopping just before your eyes. You could feel air move around your face. He was still inhaling your scent. The tension could be cut with a knife. And then, smooch. The strange appendage shot forward, kissing your cheek. It was warm and wet, feeling like being kissed by a leather sponge fresh out of the bucket. The inside of the beast's mouth reeked of the medicinal slop he was being fed when he wasn't feasting on critters. Finally, you dropped your weapon, and for a moment Yarnaby twitched, suppressing the instinct to chomp down on you. Your head turned a little, staying right at the void inside his second mouth. It was dripping with salvia. You hesitated. Your lips quivered as they slowly parted. pressing against Yarnaby's tiny mouth. Or more tiny due to size differences. To you it was just right. After the first tender touch of your soft lips against his, you closed your eyes, and your right hand was slowly going higher, until you reached up, your hand grasping his flesh tube. Not tight, but keeping it in place. You could hear his massive body awaken with excitement as he purred loudly. Feel the reverberation in your brain as he was purring loudly. He was a good kitty. Your hand stroked over his red flesh, and Yarnaby could taste every inch of you inside his mouth. It overwhelmed him. He had tasted flesh before, but... Of course, he had eaten flesh before, but usually that flesh was dead and had stopped moving. This touch on his sensitive skin was new to the beast. By now his salvia output had your head thoroughly drenched in faintly metallic-smelling slime, making your body slippery and gooey, your long hair sticking to your back. Slowly you pulled out of his maw as he stood there breathing heavily. Dripping from his liquids, you saw him cower down, tail excitedly waving from left to right. His butt wiggling a little. When you bit your lower lip, pulling at the knot holding the cloth on your chest together, dropping it to the side with a wet slap.
Brian was quietly slurping at his cinnamon-flavored, vanilla-topped Christmas fizzy fizz with cherry-flavored bobas at the bottom. How the concoction managed to be the best-tasting thing Fazbear Entertainment has ever created, no one knew, but it sold well. Absent-mindedly, the day shift guard was staring at the command prompt screen, while one of the Pizzaplex's engineers was connecting wires to two animatronics to prep them for a special occasion. Suspiciously, Brian peeked over the plastic cup at the engineer. It was some no-name, usually working on the staff bots. Normally Kevin, the on-duty engineer of the Pizzaplex, handled what was called boyfriend time, but he was taking a vacation with his son and wife, so a rando had to suffice. This guy had a semi-professional look about him. Long white hair with red-colored tips, glasses, uniform, and a constant smirk. He was carefully clicking the machine's insides as he connected cables. It would then allow for the machines to interface with the internal service of the Pizzaplex. "You're taking a while," mumbled Brian over his drink, loud enough for the new guy to hear. He raised his body and swiped his forehead. "Well, I'm not a miracle worker," he joked. "I'm more familiar with simple innards, rudimentary motors and stuff." He grabbed a rag off a cart, wiping his hands off of oil. "While I am trained in this, repeatedly only working on the same type of metal has one become a little rusty." Brian smirked at the pun, but it was enough to humanize the new guy to calm him down a little. Moments later, the monitor beeped. What?" "It says there are 4 animatronics awaiting upload. That doesn't make sense." The engineer's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. He sighed and then pulled out one of the cables. Now it's 2. Neither sun or moon have been behaving well these past 2 months, so no boyfriend time there, but for Santa, and Nurse Bendy, of course, sun promised to be a good egg all of December.
Well, here we are. Yeah, sorry, must have attached the wrong cable. The engineer sighed and wrote something quickly in his notepad. Brian didn't see where he put the sticky note, but he wasn't paid to care about that. Quickly, he typed in the commands to initiate the event. At least the ones he remembered from last time he did this. Meanwhile, the engineer stepped behind him. His cap pulled so far down that only his red, smirking lips were visible. He tapped Brian's shoulder. Hey, Brian, how about the snow-covered lodge? Wouldn't that fit for Christmas? Brian looked up, confused. Right, makes sense. All three of them liked that place a lot. How did you know? Brian looked back at where the engineer had stood. Just then, he saw his silhouette vanish from the maintenance tunnel door. About the specific worlds. Brian's eyes narrowed. Hang on. When did this guy pick up his name? Last time Brian had put on his employee name card for his shirt, that was 2 years ago. Still, the Dagar typed in the snow-covered lodge command. Maybe he had spoken to the guy once before and he just didn't remember. Could that be it? Boyfriend Time was a special, almost monthly event in the Pizzaplex. It was a private event that was entirely based on the unwritten rule of every Fazbear franchise had its own way to deal with the animatronic quirks. In this case, it was a private meeting between two animatronics in a virtual world for some much-needed R&R. Those being the daycare attendant and his two personalities, and a new animatronic, Nurse Bendy, a new addition to the Pizzaplex. She had spare glam rock innards. She could be considered one of the main cast, with top-of-the-line life support programming. She was legally considered a head nurse with 20 years of experience, even though the animatronic herself was only about 2 years old in total. She was based on the old baby animatronics with a more slender and sleek design, white clothes and a little nurse hat. While the upper half of her face was made out of white plastic, the lower half was made from silicone, allowing her much more expressiveness than any other animatronic under Fazbear to date. And the fact she legally was allowed to administer painkillers, fix wounds, as well as be able to fully stabilize someone in critical condition, made her a miracle of modern robotics. And it was this animatronic that daycare attendants' personalities had developed a deep obsession with. It was the motherly nature of Nurse Bendy. And it had reached a point where they behaved. They were good boys now, as they called it. In fact, Moon was even able to resume his intended function of the naptime enforcer. He read to the children now. He was less strict about sleep being done. Hell, he even let the older children nap inside the castle, further away from the others, knowing fully well that, more than likely, they didn't sleep at all, and were just quietly playing. The reviews of the daycare had gone up from 3 stars to 4.5. There still was the occasional complaint that the place felt off and was creepy, but the kids, they absolutely loved it. Initially, Boyfriend Time was introduced as a joke by Brian during a meeting, and as per usual, the higher-ups just went with it. This was thanks to the unique situation Brian was in. He was, after all, the son of the current CEO of Fazbear Entertainment. And sure, he might be the black sheep of the family. His normally drug-induced ideas seemed to just work for some reason. Well, maybe putting a hard-working stoner in charge of a group of misfit security guards who had declined any other job opportunity in their lives was a good idea after all.
But regardless of that, boyfriend time worked for the most part, as reward as well as punishment, as misbehavior led to the offending animatronic not attending the event, while good behavior was rewarded with participation. You, Nurse Bendy, opened your eyes inside of the log cabin. You were clothed. You could feel that beneath the blanket. Whatever it was soft and silky smooth. Felt pleasant against your skin. Inside the virtual world, you took on the appearance of a beautiful, albeit a little pale, young woman with long black hair. When asking about the origin of your character model, on-duty engineer Kevin just produced a picture on his phone, depicting a celebrity.
My wife's favorite. A personal touch and all.
He had chuckled. You were programmed with the awareness of only celebrities who were in fast-food commercials. As such, you didn't really care about the celebrity. You slowly peeled yourself out of the comfy bed. Your artificial skin in the real world had thousands of small sensors in it, but nothing compared to the feeling of actual skin. You're programmed for efficiency, and not to lollygag. But as you got on your feet, a smell entered your nostrils. Cinnamon, gingerbread, marzipan, and Christmas cheer. With a heavily beating virtual heart, you walked into the next room. The log cabin had 2 rooms, a bedroom and a living room / kitchen. A bathroom was sometimes there too, though it didn't have a toilet for obvious reasons. But this was the version without it. You're met with a Christmas wonderland. It was decorated with all the things one would expect. A tree with lights and baubles, garlands hanging from the ceiling, fairy lights covering every elevated surface and decoration, even a train toy that went around the entire room that made a little beep beep every once in a while. Warm colors all around. It was a complete sensory overload, and you needed to sit down for a moment. You exhaled as you rubbed your face. However, that's when you heard a sound from the kitchen aisle. You raised your head, staring forward towards a strange, unknown man. He was tall, muscular, with tanned skin, dressed in a red turtleneck with a big red-nosed Santa stitched on its stomach. Neck-long blonde hair that seemed to stick together as if he had just been washed or taken a dive in the ocean. And a face that was a perfect blend of the faces Moon and Sun were given in the digital world. It was sharp like Moon's, but unlike their night-themed personality, it wasn't gloomy and slightly thin, but rather it had Sun's healthy vibrance and gentleness. His right eye was red, his left was blue. Beige cargo pants covered his lower half, and he wore white socks. You felt a little underdressed in your pink pajama, with its white frills now. His hands were covered by oven mitts as he was pulling out a tray of cookies.
"Ah, you must be Nurse Bendy,"
he said with a pleasant smile. You nodded. Affirmative. He placed the cookies on the counter before taking off his mittens.
"Pleasure meeting you,"
he said calmly, and you approached him. Where are
Sun and Moon, I assume?
You nodded.
Disconnected. For a moment we were all 3 here, but then they just vanished. Assumption is someone connected the wrong cables.
Right. You leaned against the counter opposite to him. Can you tell me more information about your origin? Who are you? My name is Eclipse. I was initially programmed to be a one-man show in the theater. The other personalities being the other actors, if you will. For means unknown to me, this never happened, and so hastily someone changed some coding in my programming. The invasive code led to the overall twitchiness of my being, and it seems now I'm a daycare attendant. For a moment he looked at his hands. The pause was only interrupted by the train going beep beep before he finally added, I don't know how special this encounter is, he admitted. What do you mean? I mean, there's a high likelihood you'll never see me again after tonight. But also a chance that we will see each other again at some point when somebody makes a mistake again. So, what is more pleasing to you? A special once-in-a-lifetime encounter with me? Or the comfort of knowing that the chance of us meeting again isn't precisely zero? Your gaze shifted around the room and then you finally said, I save all my memories in a backup. You blinked. I have the ability to revisit my backups, though it is more like a virtual reality movie at the things that happened. He chuckled. That hardly counts, right? I mean, you can interact with it. Your eyes met as you tried to read each other's expressions. I'm just glad I'm in control of a body again. Eclipse raised his arms and stretched in what you had to admit was a very pleasing to the eye kind of way. The virtual human then put his mitten back on and proceeded to pour the cookies into a bowl before returning the tray to the oven. Well, surprise is over, but I made cookies, he said, as redundant as the information was. I thought you might appreciate it. He smiled almost shyly. I do, as a matter of fact. Silent Moon are not programmed with the capability of baking cookies. Well, one of the shows I was programmed with was a cooking show. There are precisely 10 recipes I have access to, and one of them are these cookies, he proclaimed proudly while tapping his head with a finger. Though I am entirely unable to alter the recipes in any way, shape, or form, so if you want cream or something like that, I cannot add that. I'm completely unable to do that. That's fine, you said as you grabbed one of the treats. Still hot. It almost burned your mouth, but thanks to its freshness, it was still soft, as the ingredients didn't have time to fully harden yet from the cooling. I was entirely unsure if you were programmed with taste buds, but I'm glad that you are. He chuckled as he saw your face lighten up as you ate. The internals of my endoskeleton include spare glamrock parts. One of them is the artificial tongue of Chica. I can feel, I can taste, I can even eat, even though it would gunk up my insides, as unlike her, I don't have an internal trash bag. Minutes later, you found yourself with Eclipse on the living room sofa. I don't know how this usually works. Mind telling me? Asked Eclipse, as a mild blush began to decorate your face. We act according to the sector we find ourselves in. We allow our programs to act out their desired functions. You blinked. Due to a glitch in the system, my compatibility as well as my friendship value towards you and your other personalities is at a non-family friendly level. Now it was Eclipse who blushed. And my programming, my feelings, tell me to do naughty things with you. You bit your lower lip.
Eclipse placed a hand on your cheek, brushing over your digital skin with his thumb. Ditto. Your mouth opened lightly, and boldly his thumb pressed against your lips until you granted him access. The taste of his skin, the rough texture as you brushed your tongue against his thumb was enchanting. You closed your eyes and hummed as he suckled. But moments later he pulled out from you, with a grin decorating his face. You looked at each other, and then you kissed him. It was important to Eclipse that you made the first move. Unlike you, he didn't have any experience with this. And despite him being tall and muscular, and somewhat intimidating, he gladly gave up his dominance to you. Your tongue entered his mouth. And how pleasant the feeling was of your gentle, squishy tongue rubbing over his. In the real world, the animatronic body he had didn't have a fully functioning mouth. As such, having one now was pleasantly alien to him, like discovering a talent he didn't know he had. Eclipse allowed you to push him into the sofa, your hands rubbing over his strong body, softened by the fabric of his turtleneck. He hummed, groaned, and sighed, pleased at your touches. And then you allowed him to raise his body again. Is something wrong, Nurse Bendy?
No, I just want you to take the sweater off.
A confident smirk appeared on his face. Okay, then. He pulled his turtleneck off and neatly placed it on the table, revealing his abs and slightly low-poly chest. But you didn't care. Gently you kissed his shoulder before going lower. He reveled in the feeling of your lips until your mouth reached his belly button. You looked up at him coyly and asked. You looked up at him coyly and said, "Now my turn. I want you to take off my PJs." It was the next morning, and the daycare attendant was the first to awaken from the boyfriend time. At the desk sat Brian, his eyes closed. Sun waved at him, but then he realized the reason he was awake and you not was just simply because he had nodded off before typing in the next command. Oh, Brian, what a lazy security guard, thought Sun. But honestly, Sun wanted to complain about him being asleep all night. He was being extra nice this December after all, and no boyfriend time for him. But just as Sun was about to jump off the table and shout, he noticed a sticky note was attached to his chest. Confused, he took it off and read it. Sorry for that, but there was someone else who also deserved to have a boyfriend time. I know you know who I mean. Merry Christmas. The note was signed with Owen at the lower right corner. Sun sighed reluctantly. He was programmed to be generous and patient, even when it was another personality of his. Well, he just saw this as a sort of bonus punishment for being naughty these past months. He would increase his efforts to be nice by a margin of 3% this coming January, just so he could definitely be with you next time.